be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there. Be there. The Vanguard will be there. Be there. Be there.
What's up, everybody? We're back. You heard it here first. It's the year of the van, and we're guarding it. It's going to be quite a lively show today. Our boy Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk, of the Kyle Kulinski Show, Crystal Kyle and Friends, all that jazz. You know him. He needs no introduction. He's going to be joining us here today.
Yeah, super excited to chat with Kyle Kulinski once again, repeat guest on this podcast. Obviously a huge inspiration for both Zach and I, someone we're always super excited to catch up with and, you know, have a bit of a back and forth. You know, it's been a couple months since Kyle was on this show. And since then, Donald Trump has been reelected. Obviously, we all know, you know, a lot's gone down. So I'm excited to catch up with the man, get his perspective on strategy as we approach Inauguration Day. I think we're about 6 days out now, maybe 5.
Yeah, it's hilarious. The last time we talked to Kyle, we were on Crystal Kyle and Friends, and I was so cavalierly being like, you know what? The left needs to stop projecting all this loser energy. The left needs to stop being concerned about all this bullshit. We have right on our side. We're going to, you know, run away with it. It's not going to be close. The United States is going to vote against fascism, yada, yada, yada. So egg on my face. That was how that went. That was our last conversation. I won't try and rewrite history. I thought it was going to go different. I was coconut pilled.
To be fair, he kind of was too. He kind of was.
I think we all were. I think everybody on that podcast thought that Kamala Harris was going to win at that time.
Oh, yeah. 100%. And by the way, John, we actually have had TJ Kirk on the show before. Feel free to, you know, search that, look up that appearance. We had a great chat with the Amazing Atheist a while back, but he's since changed his name and brand on YouTube. I'd love to have another conversation with TJ if he'd ever be willing to, but yeah, check that one out, John.
Yeah, you were telling me that TJ's actually undergone sort of an ideological pivot, given the fact that he made his entire name on YouTube as the most skeptical, least charitable guy towards religion, the guy that was going to just debunk every single mythology. And here he is now, kind of, for lack of a better word, under the spell of magic.
Yeah. TJ has apparently been getting into chaos magic, which is an interesting subject. I really enjoyed his video about it, and I'm glad he's being honest about his spiritual transformation. You know, I can still consider myself an agnostic, but you know, it's not like just because he made his name off of atheist content, it's not like he doesn't have the right to change and get into mysticism and all this kind of stuff, which he's talked about. So, you know, I appreciate him discussing that on his channel. I find it interesting, even if I don't really, you know, believe in it myself. It's fun stuff. So yeah, we'd love to chat with TJ about that. I know Kyle's another friend of TJ Kirk's. They've had several conversations. But either way, yeah, I think we got a couple super chats already, Zach, and we're waiting for Kyle. He will be here any minute, as the banner at the bottom of the screen says. Any minute, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to get Kyle in here and talk to him about the insane growth of his channel, talk about his outlook and his POV going into the next Trump era, as well as some of his thoughts on independent media. But also wanted to give a couple of shout outs to the patrons before we get into, the super chatters. Before we get into all that, we've got Boston Brian. Huge thanks to you guys again for coming on the show. Looking forward to this conversation with Kyle. Yeah, we just had a great chat yesterday with Boston Brian. Really appreciate the $4.99, man.
Yeah, shout out to you, Boston. Really appreciate the $4.99. And I agree, it was a great conversation, Brian. Thank you so much for hosting that and inviting us on your channel. And shout out to you. Thanks for the donation.
And Tony D also with the $4.99. You got Secular Talk, you got Status Quo News, and the Vanguard, the best YouTube has. Well, shout out to you, Tony D. Always appreciate that. And yeah, we're happy to be amongst such esteemed names.
Yeah, shout out to you, Tony D. That's really nice of you. So glad you consider us, you know, the cream of the crop.
Absolutely.
And shout out to you, House of Cardboard. Thanks for the $2. The Platinum Progressive into house. Yeah, like I said, Kyle's going to be joining in just a second here. And you're right. Still rocking the Platinum.
Yeah, dude, not a trend. It's not a phase, Mom. It's who I am. You know what I mean? Love that for Kyle. He's living his truth. And you want to take this one from Kelly?
Shout out to you, Kelly. Thank you so much for the $20, man. Huge shout out to Kyle for covering the LA wildfires. It's been such a scary and devastating few days for all of us to witness. I was evacuated from wildfires in Sonoma County not long after you interviewed him last time. Wow, that's crazy, man. Well, I hope that you're, totally safe this time around. But that is definitely horrifying and increasingly just the new reality if you live in that area. Kind of like how if you're someone who lives in New Orleans or something, it's like there's a hurricane season. You got to always be prepared to evacuate. If you live in the LA area or in lots of parts of California, yeah, it's kind of like, fire season. Time to get my plans ready in case an evacuation is necessary. Terrifying stuff. I'm glad we live in the Midwest, but obviously a lot of people like yourself, Kelly, holding it down. I hope you're staying safe.
Yeah, Northern California, it's crazy too, because you never hear about it as much as being a place that's vulnerable to fire. Southern California gets most of the press, but yeah, I didn't even realize that the fires in California last time around when we were reading about them had spread that far north. So that's interesting to learn, and glad that you're all right, Kelly. Really appreciate the $20 and really appreciate Racecar 789 for another generous contribution. $20 in super sticker. Really appreciate that, my man.
Shout out to you, Racecar. Thank you so much for the generosity. Really appreciate that. And then I think we got a couple new members also. Shout out to Progressively Independent. Shout out to Adele Stan for being a member for 2 months. Love your interviews. You guys are so cool. Well, shout out to you, Adele Stan. That's so nice of you.
Many people saying that the Vanguard guys are pretty cool. I like how we've upgraded. We're the Vanguard guys now instead of the Vanguard boys. You know what? All these years after growing a beard, it's finally paying off.
Yeah, well, now you're 27 now. I'm still 26, so
yeah.
I'm still a Vanguard boy. You're a Vanguard man.
Mm-hmm. That's how we do it.
And yeah, shout out to you, Liberal Animator. So glad you're loving the show. And Carl Hamilton, the best channel on YouTube. How much praise can we handle, guys? Chill.
Yeah, you don't want us to go TYT. You don't want us to, you don't let it get to our heads, everyone. You don't want us to be the next Joe Rogan experience. You got a minimal praise, excuse me. Geez, a lot more negging from the chat. That's what we require over here at the Vanguard. But Gavin, without further ado, would you like to go ahead and shout out the Patreon community, the fine folks that keep the lights on here at the Casa del Vanguard, keep us coming at you guys on a rigorous and routine basis. We couldn't do the show without you guys, and we're very grateful. We try and, upgrade all of the equipment with the money that you guys donate to us every single month, as well as live and feed ourselves. That's that good stuff. Really appreciate you guys, Vanguardians, Super Vanguardians, and comrades. $5 a month to get your name on the shout out screen. You also unlock all of our full live streams, our uncut gems, unedited and raw. Really appreciate you all.
Yep. Huge shout out to the Patreon community. Really appreciate you guys keeping the lights on here, keeping the internet bill paid. Really, really helpful. Shout out to everyone that supports the show via Patreon. You can hit up the link in the description if you'd like to see your own name up there on the shout out screen next time we go live. But yeah, we do like to start and end every single live stream with a big shout out to the patrons. They make the show possible. It's a bit of a opening credits, ending credits deal, because these are the patrons, these are the producers, whatever you want to call them. They make the show possible. So we really do appreciate that, everyone. And shout out to you, Shane, also for the $5. Super nice of you. Love your show, guys. Well, so glad to hear that, guys. We work really hard at this. We try to program guests that you'll be interested in hearing from and have conversations that you think will be insightful or entertaining. So really, it just means so much to hear that you guys have been enjoying it. And yeah, we're just getting started in 2025. We have a whole bunch of guests that are booked for the near future. We're super excited about that. We got a lot of good content, ambitious stuff coming down the pipeline for you all. This really is going to be the year where, the van takes off, I hope. So shout out to you, Shane. And like I said, Kyle's going to be here any minute.
Yeah. Shout out to you, Shane. Really appreciate the kind words. And as Gavin said, we've got all kinds of people coming down. We're trying to use our, platform for good. And we're trying to use our platform to, host conversations with all the people that we really admire and like talking with. So we've got Mike Figueiredo coming down. I believe sometime next week. We've got Emma Viglin that's going to be popping by the show. We've got our good pal Ron Placone. He's working a lot over with Status Quo recently. He's going to talk to us about some of the things that are going on in Los Angeles. He's from San Pedro. He's going to talk about some of his frustrations as a former co-worker of Jimmy Dore's. We're going to get into all kinds of that good stuff with him as well. And we're super excited does look like the man of the hour is waiting for us backstage. Gavin's going to be here in just 1 second, and then we'll get the show on the road, everybody. One more shout out to Nicholas Del Toro. Casa del Vanguard rocks. Well, shout out to you. I've been told by some Spanish-speaking folks that we have been using very, very broken grammar with our Casa del Vanguard. Somebody told me the way that we should spell it. I didn't like the way that it rolled off the tongue enough, so I was like, you know what? We're gringos, and we're going to ride with it. Casa del Vanguard it is.
Isn't
Shout
it just
out.
that the D should be undercase or something?
I'm not sure. Somebody told me that we should call it something that was a lot longer and didn't sound like Casa del Vanguard. And I was like, no, we're going to keep it the Casa del Vanguard. Anyway,
That's hilarious.
without further ado, Gavin, are you ready to get the man, the myth, the legend, Big Seltzer's own?
Yeah, actually, this episode, guys, is brought to you by Big Seltzer.
Big Seltzer approved. You know, some people, they say, I need a bunch of sugar and corn syrup and crap in my seltzer. Over here, we say no. We say we're going to give you guys the straight, high-quality H2O with a little bit of bubbly. We learned from the best. What's up, Mr. Kyle Kulinski? Thanks so much for coming back in.
My pleasure. I really thought I was the only one who took that position, that the bubbly water is the best. Other people want a flavor in there. But no, the bubbly H2O, nice and cold, is on point.
Oh, wait, do you not like the flavored varieties? Do you just stick to the straight carbonated?
So I'll drink it if I have no choice, but my choice is always just straight up water replacement, zero flavor, bubbly, ice cold seltzer.
Hell yeah.
That's sick.
Yeah.
We love
I don't even drink
LaCroix
water.
here.
Like, I'll drink water out of necessity if I don't have seltzer around, but really I prefer just drinking original seltzer.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Zach and I love these LaCroix. They have so many different flavors, but yeah, you know, there's a place for that too. Just the straight carbonated.
Are you a Perrier guy?
So good. It's so I one day I should do one of those like tier lists of all the different seltzers. But Perrier's actually, no, I wouldn't say they're at the top. I really like Polar and Vintage because they're very bubbly, super bubbly, and I always get it like really cold, and that's always that's perfect.
Yeah, it's got to be cold.
Oh yeah, these are actually
yeah.
lukewarm as a bummer, but you know we did it for the gag anyway. Kyle, one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about was the like insane growth that your channel is experiencing right now. I don't know if obviously you've been paying attention to it. I don't know if it's your favorite thing to talk about, but we've been keeping track of it for you over here because we've been astonished. You know, we've been secular talk bros for a long time, and I feel like you deserve your flowers on this. We watched. It took you a while. It felt like, to get from this hump where you were at like 800,000 subs to get to 1 million subs. And now it's like, holy shit, you're at like 1.5 million. It's just like you shook up the seltzer water and ripped off the top. And now it's this volcano over the top. Was that something that you were expecting? Was that something that you'd been building up to for a long time? I mean, over here, it just looked like you kind of stayed your course and the people found you.
Look, I think that YouTube just sort of like happens in waves. So there are times where the stuff we're talking about is popular. There are times where the stuff we're talking about, it's not popular. Certain channels will take off and slow down and then take off again. And it just happens all across the business. And so whenever you hit like a little bit of a rut or a downturn, I think people panic and they overreact and they feel like, oh my God, I have to change the way I do everything and change my opinions and start grifting in this direction or that direction. And it's stupid because if you're not being true to yourself, you're never going to be able to like keep up any semblance of an audience because people can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. And so I think the reason why I'm getting growth now is honestly the complete and utter abdication of mainstream media in particular. I mean, I criticized how they did the resistance in 2016, but at least they were resisting. CNN, MSNBC, you know, those sorts of outlets. And now what I think we're seeing is like a whole bunch of liberal refugees are flooding into left-wing YouTube because left-wing YouTube is still going to criticize Trump and hold it down from that perspective. And that's what they're used to. That's what they want to hear. But then you can also add on now, because now their minds are open, you can also add on genuine left-wing commentary and criticism and a worldview. And so I really think the reason why there's been a big bump in my channel is simply because MSNBC cucked itself, and now there's a whole bunch of refugees from MSNBC, and they're flooding into channels like ours.
Yeah, no, that's actually super interesting, Kyle, that you bring up MSNBC. I had a question in my back pocket about MSNBC. I wasn't sure if we'd get around to talking about it, but I guess here's the perfect opportunity. It seems like, you know, you're 100% right. There are a lot of people that are just straight up disappointed with the way that network is being run right now. And I have a couple opinions as to why. One, obviously, there's been this weird capitulation, from the likes of Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski. We all heard the stories about the backlash after they went to Mar-a-Lago to suck up to Trump. But arguably, I think what's even a bigger deal for the network is just like the hosts, the programming, the way it looks, the way it sounds, everything about it seems like a bottom of the barrel kind of lower tier cable news product than Fox News, which obviously is the top dog in the space. I think MSNBC is just so far behind them on like a production level. It always feels like people are zooming in, from their house or something. There's not like a really clean and clear production level of standard. It seems like it's just really kind of hit the skids or something. And the hosts themselves suck. Like, Simone Sanders and freaking all these people that have popped up on there that have no riz, they have no real point of view. It almost makes me a little bit nostalgic, even though I was so young, for the era with the Keith Olbermanns on there, where it actually seemed to have some sway over the discourse, even if it was obviously far more liberal than what I felt at the time. It seemed like it had more, it actually felt like a counterbalance to Fox News in some ways. Do you think we'll ever see a return to that? Or do you think that it's all just going to go to YouTube? It's all just going to go to this new online independent media space, which you have had some criticisms of. But is that just the new game in town?
I really don't know. I think that MSNBC is sort of cooked for a number of reasons. The biggest one, of course, is that they're being sold. They're being spun off. They're not going to be under the NBC umbrella anymore. So now they're going to be out there on their own trying to sink or swim. And without having it under that NBC umbrella, I think they're in real trouble of just in the near future not existing at all anymore. Their ratings have consistently been the worst of the three major networks, and they really were never able to sort of break through. And I think what we're seeing here is it's sort of like what happened during the FDR era when he defined all of politics for decades and decades. It's what we saw during the Reagan era, where Reagan defined politics for decades and decades. Even to this day, you can argue, till very recently, we were the Reagan era. Now I think it's viewed as the Trump era. And what you saw is a 1.5 percentage point victory from Trump and the Republicans is being interpreted by virtually everybody as, this was dominance. This was like he won 48 out of 50 states. He is the standard bearer now. His ideology is moving this country forward, which is why you're seeing all the Republicans have fallen in line. The Democrats are either fully capitulating or semi-capitulating. And now you have the media. Either it's MAGA media right wing, or it's going to be milquetoast, false equivalence, both sidesism. And so I think they're sort of cooked because they don't have the proper identity. They don't build their programming around being like a strong left-wing network or even a strong liberal network anymore. You've seen this on a number of fronts. LA Times did this, Washington Post did this, where they feel like, we got to be more balanced now because it's the Trump era. So bring in like some MAGA voices and some conservative voices, and we won't run that cartoon that criticizes the robber barons for bending the knee to Trump. We won't run that article, the opinion article that goes after the Trump transition team. And so what you're seeing here really is an across-the-board sort of capitulation. And that just leaves the lane wide open now for anybody who, number one, is anti-Trump, but number two, has an actual worldview, whether it be a liberal worldview or a leftist worldview, a worldview that is not cucking yourself to the robber barons. And so now, really, it's the Wild West again, in a certain sense. And then you even see this, like you pointed out, in new media. So much of new media is cutting in that direction also, where it's like semi-capitulation and, hey, where can we work together with these people? And so there's a hunger and a thirst out there for just somebody who will stand up and fight and call it what it is. This was not, a mandate. This was a 1.5 percentage point victory in the popular vote. And ultimately, that's not that much. When all is said and done, you have like 49% of this country does not want what we have right now. So I forecast that they're either going to go away completely or they're going to continue to be lost in the wilderness. And then the other point is, look, you can never really build a full left-wing network, right? Because if you build a full left-wing network, what are you going to have? Hosts like me on there saying we need to raise taxes on corporations and raise taxes on the wealthy, and we shouldn't have any billionaires, and we should stop all the wars, and we should arrest the robber barons. They're not going to do that because, of course, left-wing politics by its very nature threatens business, threatens the established order, right? It's about actual change. And so that leaves us where we are,
I
where
think
it's like
you'd make a good
everything's right wing.
MSNBC host, Kyle. I think they'd benefit from having you on there.
They benefit in terms of ratings, but they would lose every advertiser, and I'd probably be kicked off. Like, they would view me as an extremist, like Glenn Beck or something. When he got kicked off Fox News, they'd view me like that and kick me off within a year
Glenn
because I
Beck
would
of the
say something
left.
based. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that kind of
Get rid
tees
of
up a question I had for you quite well, Kyle, because you've made your entire name as being a guy who wasn't going to take any corporate money, right? We made the big seltzer joke, but you've never read an advertisement before Secular Talk, as far as I know. You've never taken a single conversation with a advertiser. You know, that inspired the Vanguard. We were like, fuck taking conversations with advertisers. We'll do a Patreon. We'll do the amorphous ads that YouTube does, and we'll just play with the ball game straight, right? Other individuals have taken another path, right? And they still kind of claim this independent news credentials, these ND podcast credentials. You see it with like the PBD podcast, right? Those guys are taking all kinds of corporate money. Joe Rogan is taking $100 million from Spotify. Like it or not, that's not exactly independent media. And now, you know, you made the point that it's impossible to have a truly progressive news network, which means I have to follow up and ask you about the Young Turks network, because they kind of had that goal, right? They had this ambition to be a network that was truly independent, truly progressive, right? And they were able to be extremely successful for a time. We've often documented how they small dollars fundraised $400,000 to buy their new studio. Except over the last kind of 2 years, I feel like there's been such a backslide in people saying, I'm not going to take any corporate money. They've now renamed it the Poly Market Studio, you know, which is now placing bets on how many people are going to lose their homes in the fucking Palisades fires and how many children are going to die in Gaza. And these are the people that they're advertising with at the home of new, progressive news. And of course, they're not the only ones, right? Tons of people are doing that. Jimmy Dore, when he started leaving the left, he immediately started hawking like gold and silver and a bunch of weird supplements on his show. It seems to be the more willing you are to cozy up with the powers that be, it just comes hand in hand with taking this money. So how do we compete with our own values intact and without, basically selling out all of our values along the way? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. How do we compete? Because we're going to be perpetually underfunded. I mean, the thing is, you really just got to lean into this whole, like, no, the only pure way of doing this business in this industry, the only pure way is small dollar donations from the ground up and the default ads on YouTube. That's it. I really think that this needs to be the line that everybody sort of leans into, because we're drawing a line in the sand in that respect and saying, you count as independent media if you meet these criteria. It's not independent media just because you're online. That's fake independent media, or as I call it, new corporate media. That's what, if you are giving in to the same malincentives and disincentives as mainstream media, what makes you think you're special? You're not special. You're subject to the same whims, right? So the only way to make it pure is like you guys have built it, like I've built it, like Breaking Points has built it, like Citations Needed, for example. They even go a step further than me. They say, we don't even have the default ads. We just do total small dollar donations. And I respect them for that, right? But we have to actually draw a line in the sand and say, this counts as independent media, and this other thing, whatever it is, you can call it whatever you want, but it's not independent media. It's just not. And I think a lot of people in this business, Jank loves doing the show, or certainly at least he did. I don't know if he still does, but he has like business brain to some extent. He's always been like this. He's not just a host. Like, I view myself as just a host. I view myself as just a commentator. He views himself as like a host, a commentator, but also a businessman, right? And he's always been interested in the business side of what he's doing. And if that's the case, then yeah, you're always going to wander down some paths where it's questionable in terms of what kind of deal you're making, who you're taking the money from, etc. And that has consequences, right? Like the audience is going to react a certain way at a certain point. Do
you think the money came first, or the need for money came first, right? Because we've never seen behind the curtains at TYT. I've never met Jank. He's never interacted with us. I can't really say on a personal level what his motivations are. All I can do is speculate, given that Gavin and I were viewers for a while. In your view, as somebody who was close to the network, or at least closer to the network than we are, when you look at the pivot, right? And you see, okay, wow, you're endorsing Rick Caruso, and you're saying that he would have done a better job at handling these wildfires, and you're saying, the asylum seekers are raising the rent prices in Los Angeles and all these kinds of things. Do you think that is a way to send up the bat signal to advertisers? Hey, this is a safe place to do that? Or do you think it's kind of like a coincidence that they really had these authentic worldview changes, kind of more of a centrist worldview, not in my backyard worldview. And then as a result of that, advertisers felt safer. People like Polymarket felt safer. How do you think those, ends meet, right? Because for a long time, TYT kind of prided itself as being, above the fray in that sense.
So I think they mean what they say, and they started out with deals that would more sort of fit with what their stated values are. Like there's been a number of, I don't know the names off the top of my head, I never followed this stuff that closely, but there was a number of like companies that branded themselves as progressive that TYT would advertise for those particular progressive companies almost exclusively. At some point they were doing that, where it was like, here's this progressive bank or whatever it was, I forget the name of it. And like, I think it starts out like that. And I think the ideology that they're, espousing, I think they mean the things they say and they believe the things they say, but now it's just a wider range of advertisers that they feel like, hey, this sort of fits with our values, right? I mean, I think Cenk himself might bet on sports and things of that nature. So from his perspective, he feels like, well, what's the problem if I do a deal with like Polymarket, or if I do, I don't know if he has like FanDuel or any of those other ones, but you see this from podcasters all the time, right? They'll do FanDuel or DraftKings or whatever. And this is part of the problem, right, in this business, is that I really think people feel like, wait, what's the problem? There's nothing wrong here. This is what you do if you're in media. And I don't know how to stress to people enough. Like, if you are in news and politics in particular, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. If you're some jackass comedian, okay, I get it. You're not claiming to be holier than thou. You're not claiming to be moral. You're not claiming like, hey, I need my values to be separate from these financial interests. But if you're in news and politics in particular, you need to remove any doubt in anybody's mind that there's some weird incentive structure going on there, where now you got to pull your punches because, you hear this thing from this advertiser or whatever. I mean, Crystal tells a story about when she was at The Hill, and of course, The Hill's a corporation, and the dude who owns the corporation would like contact Crystal and Sagar if they did a segment going after Big Pharma and be like, hey man, we got like Pfizer ad dollars here. And so, you might want to like reel it in a little bit. And so,
isn't that how you got banned too?
I don't remember the reason I was banned. There's a whole backstory there about like, he tried to get Crystal Kyle and friends pulled after like the first episode or something. There was like a whole bunch of craziness going on, but this is the dirtiness. And this is the messiness when dealing with what's supposed to be independent media, new media, with politics and news and commentary. And this is why we keep coming back to it. You have to say, hey, here are my values. Here's the way we fund the show, and we don't deviate from this. And the reason why I think a lot of people hesitate to do that is because you're going to leave a lot of money on the table, right? If you get big numbers, I mean, I can make triple, quadruple what I do make if I decided to talk to advertisers, if I decided to do sponsorships and ad reads and talk to these corporations, etc. But you have to make a conscious choice and say, why am I doing what I'm doing here? I'm doing what I'm doing here for the message, for the news, for the information, for the commentary and the arguments. And if I taint that in the minds of my audience, well, then I'm going to lose trust in the long run, and nobody's going to want to fucking listen to me anyway. So as long as I can pay the bills, fuck the extra money. It's not about the money. It's not about the money. But I think a lot of people in this space, they do view it as a business. And then the other thing is, with TYT in particular, Cenk always had the mindset of like, we're going to have a network that is like, we want it to be as big as CNN or bigger than CNN. And this is where people come. And when you have that mindset, you hire 70 people, 75 people, whatever it is, that you're giving yourself a massive headache. That's a massive weight on your shoulders, because now you got to try to figure out how to bring in enough revenue to feed 75 people when we know what it's like to just even try to feed one person doing this. And that makes it so now you're scrambling for business. You're scrambling to find ways to make the numbers work, right? And it just makes it a much bigger headache than it needs to be, makes it much more difficult than it needs to be. I've always been an advocate of keeping things smaller, close to the chest, decentralized. You make all the decisions, because I need to be able to come out here and defend every decision I make in this industry, because we're supposed to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We're supposed to put the truth in the message above all else. And unfortunately, in this space, you know, in the long run, a lot of shit happens, a lot of things get exposed, and people will flip on you in a second if they see you're going down the wrong path.
Right. Well, that's an interesting thing you bring up. And you talk about how, you know, Jank is going after this sponsorship money, but not just Jank, commentators at large go after this advertiser money because they feel like if they don't, then they're leaving all that on the table. As you said, you're leaving quite a bit of money on the table by not having conversations with these people. Yet, I actually think from a purely business perspective, it's actually kind of worked out for you because guess what? Secular Talk is gaining subscribers on a daily basis. As we mentioned, the Young Turks has been losing them. They're being punished by their audience for this. And a lot of times you see it when someone starts a show with this principle and then later betrays that principle, they have to pay for it. There is consequences. Meanwhile, your channel has been rewarded. Your consistency has been rewarded. So that's really encouraging to Zach and I, in addition to what you said about, you know, keeping things small, not trying to overextend from that perspective. I think that's really inspirational. And it kind of proves a lot of those establishment wisdom talking points incorrect. No, selling out isn't always the best move from a business strategy. It's not always going to be rewarded. And a lot of people that watch this content, they watch it for a reason. They're not just being programmed by the person they watch. They're not just going to agree with you because you change your mind and do an ideological 180. No, they're going to call you out and hold you accountable. With that being said, you know, in relation to your channel's growth in specific, I was thinking a little bit about something that you talked a lot about back in the day. I feel like I haven't heard as much about it these days. And that's this whole notion of there being like two different YouTube algorithms, right? You used to talk a lot about how you felt that Secular Talk was on a lower algorithm, that it was somehow being suppressed by YouTube because of the fact that it's, you know, more left-wing, anti-establishment content. But lately, as we talked about, you know, Secular Talk has been doing really well. Sometimes I will get your videos auto-played, which isn't something that used to happen, as you would complain about quite frequently. So do you feel that there's been a change at YouTube? Do you feel like there's been some sort of a tweak to the algorithm? Or do you just think that your success as a channel is being rewarded by the algorithm and you've kind of been elevated into a new category that does get recommended more?
I think we're never going to know all the specifics, and we're never going to be able to peek beneath that hood because I'm sure that they're changing policies on a regular basis. And sometimes they make it worse. Sometimes they make it better. I've heard TJ Kirk talk about this, where in the past, this was even before my time, seemingly overnight, they decided we need to be more brand friendly. No more cursing. And it was just like overnight, like boom, you couldn't curse anymore. And if you did curse, you got totally destroyed by the algorithm. Your video wouldn't be pushed out at all. And they did this in an attempt to keep the ad dollars flowing. And throughout the history of YouTube, they've gone back and forth on like some key core questions like this. Like, hey, should we allow cursing? Should we not allow cursing? They've gone back and forth in terms of the length of the videos that they prioritize. There was a time when if it was shorter, it'd get pushed out more. Now it seems to be probably the opposite, that if it's longer, it gets pushed out more. So to answer your question, I really don't know. I do think certainly when Adpocalypse happened, they were very clear and open with the fact that, yeah, like sort of fuck all of political YouTube. You guys are giving us a headache. You're more trouble than you're worth. And like, we're not going to share your shit at all. And all of us got demonetized overnight. Never mind like the algorithm crushing us overnight. That happened. But then also there's been times where it's like, oh, wait, it looks like we're sort of getting a push at the moment. You know, I mean, look at the way different channels work, right? Like take David Pakman, for example. He'll put out a video that'll get like 6,000 views. Then another one, it'll be like 12,000 views. Then he'll put one out there and it's like 650,000 views. And you're looking at it and you're like, what? How does that make sense? It's because you look at a channel like mine and it'll be relatively consistent. It's 60,000, 70,000, 65,000. Maybe one blows up and it's like 180 or whatever. But like it's relatively consistent. But his
You
channel
had a good run of like 300,000, 400,000. Kyle, I'll give you your flowers. I keep tabs on you for a living. I happen to know you've been doing pretty good over there.
All right. Well, then you know better than I do. But I'll look at that and go, how is that possible? And the answer is, there's some black magic going on with what they've decided to do with the algorithm, what they push out, what they don't push out, etc. And there are times where we've been victims of that, and there are times where we've been beneficiaries of that, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I don't know. I'm at the point now where it's just, they're going to do whatever they're going to do as long as they don't completely and utterly snuff us out in the crib and destroy our spread completely. You just roll with the punches and try your best, you know, and then hopefully you can put out content that's good enough that gets to enough people, gets to enough eyeballs where they're like, okay, you know what, we'll subscribe, we'll keep watching, etc.
Yeah. One thing I did have to ask you about, Kyle. Obviously, you have a ton of lore and a long back history with the man himself, Joe Rogan, right? And one of the things that I always really enjoyed about Joe Rogan as a guy who was a fan, I was also a fan, right? And you have to remember back in the day when he would have all the Vice guys on, right? He would have Shane Smith on regularly. Yep. He would have Eddie Wong on regularly. He would have these guys that had traveled the world and documented one thing above all, and it was climate change, right? And I remember like a 4-hour-long podcast, and I was a pizza delivery guy my senior year of high school, and I listened to the whole thing while I was working, and I was learning all this stuff about Greenland and the ice caps, and Shane Smith was really scaring the crap out of me, like, oh my God, major corporations are betting against or betting on flooding in Miami and all these kinds of things. It's all rigged. Like, they know what's happening, and they know it's the burning of fossil fuels, right? Pretty much undeniable. And Joe Rogan became a really good vehicle for just saying, you know what? Fuck this, like climate change is real. Burning fossil fuels is a huge problem. And recently, as a part of his ideological run to the right, he's completely abandoned that position. He's now come out and started saying things like this. I'll play a brief clip of his conversation with Mel Gibson for you, Kyle, so you can just see how far away from the target he's gotten from a guy I know knows better.
Well, there's a lot of horseshit that's involved in climate change for sure. I've studied that and I've had many discussions over the last 4 years. The problem with anything is that once a narrative gets established and then there's a profit attached to the solution to that narrative. Yes. And that's green energy and green energy bills. And then there's businesses that are wrapped around there. And then there's also this fear that they love to pump into people about climate change, that, you know, they terrify the shit out of young people that we're going to destroy the world and climate change, you must act now. And then you become beholden to the political party that is espousing these ideas. And then your enemy is the deniers of this science, even though you don't even understand the science. And did you see the Washington Post article?
So you get the idea. They go on to talk about how it's actually okay that the glaciers are melting, and then they hold up I swear to God, Mel Gibson holds up a glass of water and said, "This is where melting glaciers go. It's part of the cycle of life." So it's a far cry from where everybody that's been a longtime listener of the Joe Rogan Experience knows he once was. What is the cause of that regression? Are we losing the ideological battle on climate change that badly, or are we just watching somebody be poisoned by money and removal from the real world?
I mean, Joe Rogan in particular has cucked himself to the robber barons in the most humiliating and embarrassing way I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it is like, here's a guy, let's see, who's this friend group? It's edgy right-wing comedians whose whole point is to just offend people and think that that's funny, right? So like, he's got the edgy asshole comedians. He's got the MMA fighters, UFC fighters who love Trump. And then he brings in like mega wealthy celebrities and robber baron assholes like that. He can't go a month without giving a hand job to a robber baron on his show these days. Like, it's nonstop. It's every time you look up, oh, look, Mark Andreessen. Oh, look, Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, look, Peter Thiel, who looks like he just fucking feasted on the blood of a baby with his wet ass face, right? Like, this is what's happened. And so he's cocooned himself in this right-wing echo chamber, and he's heard nothing but the dumbest, most wrong people say the dumbest, most wrong shit for 4 or 5 years straight now, and he's abandoned everything that he claimed to believe in. You all remember that video, that compilation I play on my show all the time, where he's talking about higher wages for people and universal health care and ending with corruption and things of that nature. And now he endorsed Donald fucking Trump. Donald Trump took $160 million from foreign governments when he was president last time. Jared Kushner took $2 billion from Saudi Arabia and has these intricate business deals with Saudi Arabia that Donald Trump is involved in too, with the live golf events and stuff like that. This guy's the most corrupt guy we've ever seen in the White House in modern American history. And here he is. Anytime it's a Democrat, if it's Hunter Biden, if it's Joe Biden, oh my God, Joe's all over it. He's all over the case, making sure you know about all the corruption and pay-to-play bribery and all that stuff. But if it's Trump, he goes to sleep, right? I support universal health care. That's why I endorsed the guy who 3 million people lost health insurance under him the last time. It's a joke. It's a joke. I remember when Joe debated Candace Owens on the issue of climate change, and he did a phenomenal job. And the point Joe kept coming back to is like, Candace, you're a totally arrogant blowhard. You have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. You have zero humility, because every article we pull up here says in no uncertain terms that virtually every climate science expert is saying this shit is real and it's man-made. Right? There was a meta-analysis where it's like 99.9% of the studies that have been done over the past however many decades say it's real and it's man-made. Right? And this was his point he kept coming back to. Like, what, you think you're fucking smarter than the experts. Now what does he do? He runs into the loving embrace of that 0.1% of climate science liars who are funded by ExxonMobil and acts like, no, they're the ones with the truth. It's the hidden truth that they don't want you to see. And this is the part that pisses me off the most, is they posture like they're anti-establishment. Meanwhile, nobody is a bigger bitch of the establishment and has fallen for more establishment narratives than Joe Rogan. Go have on another billionaire robber baron. Do that, Joe. Have on another one while you're at it. Why don't you invite all of them on your show and you can break out the hot stones and give them a massage? What's happened to this guy is absolutely pathetic. What's happened to this guy is absolutely embarrassing.
Oh, I totally agree, man. And it, like, you know, I know he's been friends with Elon Musk for a while. It's disgusting. But to fucking have on Mark Zuckerberg and let him run his mouth about all the shit, lie over and over again about the fucking Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I don't know if you saw that clip, but it was outrageous. He then goes on to talk about how, you know, oh, Apple has not invented anything worthwhile in years now. Which
how's the metaverse going? How's the metaverse going?
Exactly. Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, is a total fucking failure of a company. They've destroyed their only, you know, decent product, which was Facebook, the original one. It's an unusable slop machine now where you can't even scroll for 5 seconds without seeing a bunch of AI generated shit and misinformation. He's talking about bringing back getting rid of the fact checkers. I'm like, what fucking fact checkers? Every time I go on Facebook, it's nothing but AI garbage and misinformation. So he's destroyed the one product that originally made him successful. He's also acquired Instagram, basically destroyed that too. It's like a shadow of its former self as far as the quality of that app goes. I mean, the metaverse was a total fucking flop, and Joe Rogan doesn't bring any of that shit up. He just lets him get away with it and acts like he's some brilliant entrepreneur because in like 2007, he made some like Hot or Not website, which happened to get lucky and turn into a global, you know, social media that took MySpace, which in retrospect was probably a way better social media the whole time. So it's like this guy has contributed nothing to fucking society. He bent over backwards when Biden apparently told him to censor people, and now he's going to cry victim and snuggle up to power again just because there's a new president. It's absolutely outrageous. And again, Joe Rogan didn't even push back once.
Well, you guys are forgetting that he does jujitsu.
That's right. That's so he likes him. Rogan has, without a doubt, the worst case of medieval peasant brain I've ever seen in my life. He really thinks like, oh, this person makes more money than me. This person's a billionaire. They must be a genius. They must be one of the hardest working people in the world. And it's like, you do realize that's like complete fucking baby brain shit. It's like when he talks about health. If somebody's like overweight, but they're a scientist, and the person is giving like health facts, Joe will be like, but you're fat. Like you're fat. As if like that has any fucking bearing on the scientific validity of something. It could be the most brilliant fucking person in the world. If they're overweight, he's like, why should you even be allowed in the conversation? Like this is genuine low IQ shit. Genuine low IQ shit. And this is, he let Trump lie to him the entire interview too. Remember when Trump said to him, yeah, I never said lock her up. I never said lock her up about Hillary. Meanwhile, there's compilations fucking like hours long of every time in the rally. He's like, lock her up, lock her up. He just sat there and took it repeatedly to his face.
He said it on the debate stage.
Care. I know. He said on the debate. Rogan doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's thrown his lot in with MAGA. He's real. These are my people. I'm going to be over here with these people. And he shut his brain off. Zero criticism anymore. Zero logic. Zero critical thinking. He's just completely and utterly sold out. There's not a shred of dignity or credibility. Tomorrow I'm covering a story about how his own fans are turning on him now over something new. He had a $100 million deal from Spotify. Then he had some other fucking 200 some odd $1 million deal. And guess what? Now, even if you sign up for Spotify Premium, they jam-pack the shows full of ads and you can't even skip them.
Oh.
And here's Mr. fucking everyman, like, oh yeah, I'm one of you guys. Here, buy my shitty fucking supplements that'll make you bleed out of your asshole.
Bro,
like, fuck out of here, man.
Dude, and at one point the ads were at least kind of funny, right? I don't know if you guys remember, but like early on in the Joe Rogan experience, it was like fleshlights and like even the Alpha Brain shit I could get over with. Although each and every product on it is brought to you by the Joe Rogan experience, all that shit. Yeah, now it's completely lost the plot. But to further flesh out the level of cognitive disconnect in these folks, right? Because you mentioned it, he hates people who aren't fit. He hates fat people. I remember when Neil deGrasse Tyson would come on his show and he'd be like, I don't know why that guy's so smart. I don't know why he doesn't lift lift weights and get some muscles. You know, like he probably associates it with vanity, but it would just make him smarter. Like that's a real quote from Joe Rogan talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? So he hates fat people. He doesn't like them at all, or at least he has a prejudice towards them and he thinks that they're weak and that they don't care enough to get skinny. But
Mhm.
But after making his entire brand about fitness and functional strength, and I only eat meat and I shit black, but it's worth it, and all this kinds of crazy stuff, he's like, I'm going to go with the Big Mac eating, Diet Coke guzzling, fat bastard named Donald Trump, and he's going to be my kingpin. He's going to be my guy. I'm going to devote all of my time to kissing his ass and having a cadre of goons who pay his bills and lobby for him on my show and turn it into a downright propaganda machine of this fat oaf who stands for nothing but the gluttony and unrepentant fucking laziness of our country that Joe Rogan claims to stand against. Like, he says all that stupid shit about how we should learn how to suffer more. I'm like, bro, you live in a compound, and I'm pretty sure you haven't thought about bills once since you were 25 years old. So let's not talk about like how we need to struggle more.
And by the way, who mass produced the vaccine that Rogan thinks doesn't work and is a big pharma scam? Who was the one who did Operation Warp Speed that got us that? Oh, that's right. It was Trump. When did all the lockdowns happen? Oh, that's right. Trump was president when all the lockdowns happened. This is the thing. Like, don't try to make sense of the ideology. It doesn't make sense. They don't care that it doesn't make sense. It's not about that. He's got his like comedian buddies that he's friends with, and they're got their little clique. Now it's also, he's expanded that to the political sphere too. Trump's his boy, MAGA's their people, and so now it's ride or die for them, right? And it's pathetic and it's embarrassing what's happened to him, because again, this was a guy who in the past endorsed Bernie Sanders, said good things about universal health care and things of that nature, and now everything he claimed to believe in, he sold out on it. It's that simple. He sold out on it. And but again, I think we're now starting to witness the beginning of the decline for Joe Rogan. I mean, I think his podcast peaked a while ago, but now it's sort of getting undeniable in many respects. There were people on his Reddit page who were pissed off. You guys remember the scandal when he came out? I forget if it was against paid family leave or paid maternity leave or paid paternity leave or something like that. And his own people were like, hey, sort of fuck you, man. You got $100 million. We're over here barely making ends meet.
I think it might have been UBI.
He did that too. He did UBI too, but there was one other one where I remember, because me and Crystal responded to it, and I went through like, here are the laws that the other countries have when it comes to paid time off, and we are uniquely screwed in this country, and they think you're a fucking cog in a machine of a capitalist boss who wants you to die in the meat grinder, so maybe it's okay to give people some time off, Joe, walking him through it as like calmly and slowly as possible. And allegedly I changed his mind on that, right? But then he fucking snaps right back into the bullshit anyway. I'll have on Ben Shapiro and act like he's a genius a week later, and it's like, you do realize this doesn't make sense. You do realize you can't say, yes, that argument from Kyle makes sense, and also this argument for Ben Shapiro makes sense. We are polar opposites on virtually every single issue. So he's always been a vibes guy. He's always been a, let me ride the wave kind of guy. And now we're just seeing the logical culmination of that. That's where we are now.
I do have to ask, Kyle, some people have speculated that, you've taken a very different tone as it relates to Joe Rogan than you once did. Obviously, you've documented the reasons why, but was there a personal falling out there? Like, did you try to get on his show to debate the stuff and were denied? Was there some, correspondence between you two? Not that you have to share if there was, that, kind of led you to really decide like, nope, I'm done. I'm going on the warpath.
No, the one piece of credit that I'll give Joe Rogan is that usually in this business, if I actually start going after somebody, you might get like an angry text message or an angry DM from the person that you're going after, all in their feelings or whatever. Joe and I haven't said anything to each other since probably the last time I was on the show.
With Tim Dillon?
No, that was 2 times ago, I think, or maybe even 3 times ago. But we haven't said anything to each other. I haven't reached out to him. He hasn't reached out to me. I harbor no ill will. It's not personal. None of this is personal. It's not personal. If you're shoving people into fascism, then I'm going to be like, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, and I'm going to come after you for substantive reasons. Yeah. But to answer your question, no, and people who know me also know I don't care about getting on shows. Like I could care less. I could spend from now until I die, I could go on no other shows and I'd feel fine. I'd just keep doing my show over and over. This stuff has no bearing on me whatsoever. So no, there's been none of that. And I don't know, he wouldn't invite me on again, but if he were to invite me on again, I don't know if I would accept.
It would be awkward. It would be awkward for sure.
Well, it'd be awkward, especially because I know I'm going into a place where even if I'm 100% correct and 100% accurate in everything I say and I deliver it in the best way possible, it's still going to be like, there's going to be hell to pay and his people are going to come after me. And it's like, is it worth it? Because at this point, I view going on his show as going on Rush Limbaugh's show. Like, it's the same shit. He wants to
It's
go do
really
shows
not-
at Mar-a-Lago. Like who are we kidding here? This guy's more
No.
like Sean Hannity than he will ever
And-
be like Bill Hicks or George Carlin. And those were people who were more like his heroes.
And honestly, at this point, I would say he's more like Alex Jones than he is like Rush Limbaugh. 'Cause
Correct.
His whole show is about like insane conspiracy theories. I mean, it's one thing to go down the anti-vax rabbit hole, but it's now like he's applying that, criticism he had of the medical and pharmaceutical establishment to just every establishment. As we talked about, he's now totally denying climate change and acting like all these people within the scientific establishment are full of shit. It's like, no, dude, as you mentioned, Kyle, it wasn't that long ago that he was calling that bullshit out when it came from Candace Owens. But now, because he's all like, the pharmaceutical establishment lied to me. Now it's like, I guess the scientific and the climate establishment also must be lying. Might as well just at a knee-jerk reactionary level take that position against the establishment every single time, which obviously is really dangerous because climate change is fucking happening. And even if the vaccine had been botched, which it wasn't, but even if it fucking had been, that doesn't mean you totally disregard every piece of medical advice going forward.
Yeah, one of my problems with these people is that they invert every single conspiracy, right? So to them, it's these greedy scientists and these greedy liberal politicians who are pushing the false conspiracy of climate change on you. And it's like, what's more likely? Greedy scientists working on like $30,000 grants, or I don't know, ExxonMobil and fucking Chevron and big oil companies who are really doing the conspiracy, who knew 70 fucking years ago that climate change was happening, and they did everything they could to cover it up and lobby and buy our government to overlook that fact and allow them to keep getting corporate welfare, allow them to keep making profit day after day, year after year. Obviously, the real conspiracy is with fucking ExxonMobil, but he inverts it like it's liberal politicians or fucking scientists who work at some university, like they're part of the conspiracy. And it's the same thing on the medical front. You know where the real fucking conspiracy is? You know who the real charlatans and frauds and con men are? You know who they're? The alternative medicine cranks that they suck off all the time. The people RFK loves. The people selling this fake medicine that they pretend is medicine, but it's not medicine because it didn't even make the cut to become actual medicine. So they invert every conspiracy. The problem with Big Pharma is not that they sell things that don't work. The problem with Big Pharma is the fucking profit margin where they're price gouging everybody. Guess what? Insulin works. Antibiotics work. Vaccines work. The problem is it's way too fucking expensive and regular people can't afford it. So the answer is to nationalize Big Pharma and get rid of the profit motive. But these people wouldn't know a fucking solution if it hit them over the head like a fucking anvil because they're too busy flipping every single conspiracy and inverting it. And then you have idiots like fucking Alex Jones is the guy you look up to. Alex Jones. The guy who lies about fucking everything, wrong about everything, literally said Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama are fucking demons, never met a dumbass conspiracy they didn't fucking like. If anything, Alex Jones is the fucking conspiracy. This is a guy who says his politics are fucking libertarian capitalist. So he's part of the conspiracy, the global conspiracy of capitalism and profit, where robber barons get wealthier and wealthier and run out the back door with all the money as the rest of us fucking suffer and die. And Alex Jones, his whole job is to distract you from the robber barons doing that. Right? That's what he's doing. And Joe Rogan has gone right down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah. One quick question I had for you, Kyle, that sort of relates to this is obviously Joe Rogan was a guy that stung when he went to the right. I was a huge Joe Rogan fan. I just thought that he was a really compelling broadcaster. Obviously, we're both in this line of work from a narrow, like conversationalist level. There's so much you could learn from the guy, right? About how he conducts himself on the microphone. I really did listen to him a lot. And it was devastating the way that he decided to pivot and sell out to the right. But on a more granular level, on a more meaningful level, I want to talk about a really, really hard pivot from somebody that we thought was maybe going to be a potential leader for the left in the post-Bernie Sanders era. Of course, I'm talking about John Fetterman, who not only has he been one of the most rabid, unhinged Zionists in the Democratic Party or in the Senate period, but he's also become a weird anti-immigration, I'm going to fearmonger about Hispanic people and border hoppers and criminals coming from Mexico in a way that, again, rivals almost Donald Trump and MAGA. He was the first Democratic senator and maybe the first nationally elected Democrat, period, to support the Laken-Riley Act, which basically just allows them to arrest you on sight if you're an undocumented immigrant and they suspect you of doing a crime. They're just going to be like, hey, we think you're undocumented. We're going to arrest you. It's crazy. Where is your head at on John Fetterman, and how do we identify the red flags earlier on so that we don't find ourselves in this position again with somebody in the midterms or in the general election come 2028?
John Fetterman is a weak, corrupt person who's riding the wave. That's what he's doing. Just like Joe Rogan, just like the rest of them. Well, you asked, that's the real question, right? And I don't know the answer. How do we identify these people earlier on? I mean, I guess I would say just watch out for the red flags and have more scrutiny for the red flags. But then you run the risk of like taking somebody who might genuinely just disagree on one or two issues and pretending like they're part of the problem when really they're more part of the solution. It's a tough line to walk. But in the case of John Fetterman, look, there's many cases like him. This is what we talked about before. There was a Ronald Reagan era. There was an FDR era. And now we're entering the Donald Trump era. And the reason why there's a Donald Trump era, even though there shouldn't be, because he doesn't have the numbers to back it up, is because of weak people without an ideology who are really corrupt, who are just trying to ride the wave of what they think is immense popularity. And that's why you see so many on the Democratic side are like, I'm going to join the Doge caucus because I believe in government efficiency too. You see that. You see John Fetterman seemingly every time he opens his mouth is to validate some bullshit right-wing narrative, right? He's done on immigration, Israel. He does it on all these different issues. And what our job is to say, get the fuck out of the way. We have no interest in your bullshit whatsoever. We have no interest in either your full capitulation or your semi-capitulation to MAGA. We're the boss now, bitch. And the thing that drives me crazy is the right knows this, right? After Barack Obama won, Mitch McConnell met with John Boehner in a smoke-filled back room and said, here's our goal. He's going to be a one-term president. He's going to get absolutely nothing done, and we're not going to give an inch to him. Fuck him. That's what their meeting was. Donald Trump wins, and seemingly half the Democrats come out of the woodworks and say, oh, let's find areas where we can work with them. Let's bend the knee. Let's give them credit on immigration. Let's fold on the Lake and Riley Act. Let's fold on this. Let's fold on that. Let's go and say, I'm one of the good ones on TV. Pick me, pick me, pick me. And this is the shit we can't deal with anymore on the Democratic side and on the left and among liberals. We need people with actual fucking backbone, with spine, who believe in something, who are not going to bend. We need people who are still out there saying the same goddamn things now as if it was 2 years ago and 5 years ago and 10 years ago. The answer is single-payer Medicare for all. The answer is a 4-day work week. The answer is universal basic income. The answer is the PRO Act so that everybody can be part of a union. The answer is to get money out of politics. The answer is a higher minimum wage. And these things didn't fucking change because a bloated orange freak happened to win a second time by a fucking pubic hair's length. Okay? And so that's what we need to do, man. We need to lead the charge. We need to be clear. We're not going to tolerate any of this bullshit. If you're either fully capitulating or semi-capitulating, get the fuck out of the way and let the real leaders take it from here. Let us show you how it's done. Because unfortunately, you don't see that kind of fire. You don't see that kind of passion. And it's a goddamn shame because that's certainly how I'm feeling right now. I understood the notion in 2016 of being like, hey, maybe we can find some areas where things can work out. Maybe we can destroy Trans-Pacific Partnership and kill the outsourcing deals and find areas of agreement with MAGA if he actually means the anti-war shit he says. In 2016, that's one thing, because there was some actual genuine openings of maybe this could work. It's not 2016 anymore. Donald Trump is a fraud, hack, corrupt, sellout, establishment prick. His movement is a cult, okay? They're not going to do anything good. Fucking zero. Nothing good. We need to be the ones to call that out and point it out, and every step of the way say, told you so. Told you they were going to do that. Told you they were going to fuck you over. Told you this wasn't going to be good. But we're here to fix it. Now you come in this direction. Now you come with us, and we'll show you the way to actually improve this country for the American people, not the fucking robber barons at the top, for regular Americans.
Yeah, 100%, bro. I totally agree with that. Speaking of leaders of the left, someone that I feel like has received a lot of criticism, not just from us, but also you over, her entire tenure as a congresswoman, to be honest. But lately, I feel like has received a bit of a resurgence in popularity is AOC. Obviously, you founded Justice Democrats with a couple other people, and we were all real optimistic about AOC at first. But, we've also documented a lot of the ways in which she has kind of sold out or capitulated to the establishment of the Democratic Party. Again, we've had a lot of notes, but it does seem like she's, outlasted Cori Bush, for example, and, some of these other Justice Democrat type progressive Congress people. And there also was this phenomenon that was documented and taken note of specifically, in her district, where there were people who voted not only for AOC, but also for Donald Trump. And this has led some people to say, well, like it or not, there's our leader. That's who the progressive movement has in Congress with the most popularity, with the ability to even potentially win over voters from across the aisle. Do you view it that way, or are you still too skeptical of AOC to embrace her as someone that could actually lead the movement in a serious way.
Here's the unfortunate thing. I genuinely now believe we don't actually get to pick our leaders. That somebody sort of organically emerges, however they wind up emerging, whatever things they say that get enough people riled up and ready to go and ready to support them. And then leaders emerge, and then like it's on us to try to work within that structure, basically. We got really, really lucky in all sincerity when it was like Bernie in 2016, where it's like, whoa, hold on. We actually agree with him on virtually everything. This is incredible, right? But this time around, like, I don't know who's going to emerge. Is it possible that it's AOC? Sure. She's shown some instincts that are good, but then she's also shown some instincts that are pretty bad, which could lead her to misstep early on and not end up being one of the leaders. But somebody is going to emerge, and somebody is going to take the mantle and run with it. It ain't going to be fucking Hakeem Jeffries. It ain't going to be like Nancy Pelosi. There's a chance it's AOC. I don't know how big of a chance it is that it's AOC. There's a chance it's somebody that, you know, you guys and me don't like or really don't want. Like, do I want Pete Buttigieg to be fucking leading the resistance? Do I want Gavin Newsom to be leading the resistance? No, I don't. But somebody's going to emerge. Somebody's going to take that mantle and somebody's going to run with it, and they will have all the juice. They will have all the momentum. And then at that point, there's not going to be much we could do about it. You guys know what my take is. I really hope it's Jon Stewart. I mean, I know that he doesn't seem like he's kind of like me in that he really doesn't want to ever officially run for anything, right? Like he's got that vibe to him of like, this is just a fucking headache and bullshit and I don't want to deal with it. But also, I mean, I think that old adage is true. Like the people who deserve power are the ones who want it the least. And like, he clearly doesn't want to be president, but also he has all the tools. He has the charisma. He has the proper ideology. He's just the right amount of controversial, which you need in today's day and age. You're talking about AOC. I think that's one of the problems with AOC, right? Is that she doesn't quite know how to handle controversy. She doesn't know which issues to purposefully be controversial on and which ones not to. You know what I mean? So, but some leaders going to emerge. I hope it's somebody like Jon Stewart. In terms of AOC, I guess it's sort of like a 50-50 thing. There's upsides to her being the leader. There's downsides to her being the leader. But it's also very possible that it's somebody that we don't want to be the leader. But I'll tell you one thing for sure, and this is the good news. The good news is your leaders are not going to be any of the people who are overly political and overly calculating, people like John Fetterman, who are finding ways to cuck themselves to MAGA repeatedly. That is not going to be your leader because you have a foot in the camp of the enemy. And guess what? We've singled them out. They are the enemy. So if you put a foot in their camp, we have fucking zero interest in you being. It's like saying Joe Scarborough will be the leader. It's like, no, he fucking won't. He's cucking himself to MAGA. So somebody will emerge. I don't know who it is, but you know, I hope it's somebody who not only has the anti-Trump bona fides, but also somebody who can lead ideologically and lead us out of the wilderness.
Yeah.
Totally.
Last one from me, Kyle. You know, we've been longtime listeners of Secular Talk. I remember when you did your video, or maybe I don't remember exactly, but you did the Barack Obama video way back in the day, giving him a report card. And you've always kind of had a trend of when a candidate leaves office, you do a report card. I'm curious to get your early thoughts on Joe Biden, given the fact that he was a guy that, you know, you were extremely charitable to, given the fact that you guys had very different politics when he took office. I think that, you know, you were really willing to give him a clean slate and give him credit for things like the Afghanistan withdrawal, things like that. But obviously after October 7th, 2023, his entire legacy changes. I'm just curious, as you approach this, and I imagine you do a video on Joe Biden's report card when he leaves office, how are you weighing his domestic policy versus his foreign policy? And how do you think that in 25 years from now, people are thinking about Joe Biden's presidency?
So first of all, I actually, and many people have pointed this out, I actually haven't done an official Trump one, but I kind of did an unofficial Trump one. For those of you who are interested in seeing that one, you can, I believe it was a day before the election. I did a video. I wish I could remember what it was titled. I don't remember what it was titled, but it was something about like, it might've been like anti-endorsement of Donald Trump, or here's why Donald Trump shouldn't win, or something like that. It was the day before the election. And in that, I sort of lay out everything about Trump, the few good policies he did, the overwhelmingly horrific policies he did. And that's effectively my Trump report card. Spoiler alert, it's an F. I don't think I say that in the video, but that literally is what it is. For Biden, this is the first time I've thought about it, hearing you bring it up. And it would be such a difficult one to do for this very simple reason. If you look at foreign policy, well, even that is not correct, accurate. If you look at Israel and Gaza, he gets like literally a 0%. Like it just arming and funding a genocide, sitting there casually and accepting it, and even cheering it on as babies get bombed and torture happens, and Israel sets up concentration camps and they bomb schools and hospitals and UN workers and World Central Kitchen workers and starve all of North Gaza. And we get these videos every day in social media of like the most egregious, horrific, savage, brutal things you've ever seen. Israeli officials on a daily basis sounding like they're quoting fucking Mein Kampf. And you have Biden still, okay, here's more money, here's more weapons. So on that front alone, you know, it leads me to believe like it almost doesn't matter what else you did. It's like, well, how am I going to raise your grade? If I did. I looked after my sister really well and made sure she got taken care of. But also, I'm a mass murderer. It's like, okay, well, then I sort of got to deduct you on the mass murder thing, and that sort of ruins your whole opportunity, right? Like I can't give you a good grade now, right? So I don't know how I would grade him for that simple reason, is that everything in me screams like F, 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 because you're arming and funding a genocide, which I think it's reasonable to take that position. At the same time, if we were to like sort of separate it out, right? If we were to give it different categories, like, okay, here's the economy is one, right? So domestic policy is one. Pre-October 7th foreign policy is another one. And then Israel, Gaza, post-October 7th is the third. If you grade it like that, then it actually gets really interesting, because by far, domestically, he's by far the most progressive president of your lifetime and my lifetime. And it's not even close, right? It's not even particularly close. What he did is he's so old, he's so ancient that he actually remembers the FDR era. He was actually around for the FDR era. So he remembers what it's like for Democrats to actually believe that government can be a force for good in people's lives domestically. And so he really did sort of split the difference. He was like half Obama / Bill Clinton, half FDR. And so that's why you got things like, you know, the CHIPS Act and the Infrastructure Bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and the $1,400 stimulus checks and the project labor agreements and the 800,000 manufacturing jobs created and, you know, whatever, the list goes on and on. So if you were to grade it like that, you'd got to go like, I don't know, maybe C+ or B on the economy front, and then probably got to go C+ or B on the foreign policy front prior to October 7th, because he pulled us out of Afghanistan and told the media to suck his nuts, told the Republicans to suck his nuts, told the establishment Democrats to suck his nuts, nearly eliminated the drone war. But then he just fucking squandered all of it. He just squandered all of it by arming and funding a genocide, knowing he was arming and funding a genocide. And now you even have outlets like fucking 60 Minutes just did a detailed report the other night and they're like, yeah, basically everything every lefty was saying from fucking day one is 100% accurate. You had people in the U.S. government going up to Biden administration officials like, so, hey, here's a bunch of pictures of kids who got sniped in the head on purpose by the IDF, and we kind of think this is bad. And they're like, we don't want to see that. Get that away from us. And it's like, so What do you want? Like, what do you want me to do in that scenario? It's like, I can't help but say, fuck you. You get an F for blowing it. And the real historical parallel here is obvious. It's Lyndon B. Johnson.
LBJ.
Yeah. Lyndon B. Johnson. He escalated the war in Vietnam over and over and over. Countless deaths, like 1 million Vietnamese killed, more than that probably. So a lot of tens of thousands of U.S. troops died in that instance too. Escalate. While at home, he's like, let's do the war on poverty, right? And so the sweet spot is very simple. The sweet spot is very straightforward. All you have to do, for the love of God, all you have to do is genuinely be anti-war, actually care about international law and human rights and things of that nature overseas, and domestically actually fucking give a shit and bring back New Deal politics. And if a U.S. president were to do that, I'd be more than happy to give him a fucking A. But nobody has married all of those things together, right? And it's kind of crazy because like Obama went from being way worse than Biden to now at the end, if you do an analysis of both presidencies, I think you kind of got to say in totality, Obama was better just because he didn't arm and fund a direct genocide in fucking Israel, right? And that's crazy because for a while there, Biden was way ahead of Obama, and now that seemingly flipped at the end.
Right. And even the good things that Biden did, I feel like one of the big issues with his presidency is that he still somehow managed to blow it. Like with the Afghanistan thing, it was the right thing to do. And you're right, he did tell the media to suck his nuts, but I don't think he properly communicated the reason why he was doing it. I don't think he properly defended himself, nor did the administration as a whole, which led to the anti-war movement actually taking a hit, in my opinion, because that led to his approval rating going down. And now
no president's going to end another war ever again, ever, because they go,
Exactly.
oh, we saw what happened when Biden did it. And and I think the part of the problem there too is his age, right? He's so fucking old. He doesn't have the vigor to get out there and do a press conference and be like, look, I'll take all comers. I'll tell you why I'm 100% fucking correct. The real scandal is not that I pulled out of this war. The real scandal is that we did the war in the first place. Do you have any idea how many trillions of dollars we wasted? How many lives are lost? All the fucking war profiteering that was going on with the military industrial complex. I'm here to save the fucking day and put an end to this. And all you should be thanking me. That's what a competent president could do, but he doesn't have that ability.
And it's kind of a shame too, because I do think if you go back and rewatch like his debate with Paul Ryan from 2012, I do think that Joe Biden could have properly defended the decision. I do think 100%. He was a better communicator than some people on the left give him credit for, because they just think of him as being like the last 4 to 6 years of who he's been, where if you go back, it's like, no, I kind of see why he succeeded in politics. I kind of see why he kept getting elected by people and shit. He definitely had a way with words, and he was charismatic and in his own way, but not by the time he became president. Either way, I think that's basically it for my questions. Do you have anything else for Kyle, Zach?
No, just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to come by. Sorry for a little bit of a technical hiccup here. Our camera is being a little slow towards the end for everybody watching, but Kyle, thank you so much for your time, man. Always a pleasure. And we can't wait to chat again.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Anytime. Take care.
Thanks, Kyle.
And then, yes, let me see if I can't adjust our camera.
Yeah, let's throw this angle up on screen real quick so we can reboot that maybe. Yeah. What's up, everyone? Let's quickly reboot the camera. Sorry about that. It was totally my fault.
Oh, no. Oh, wait. No, not in stream. That would be fucking.
Yeah. No, I was getting up to move the light and knock down our actual camera, which hopefully didn't permanently ruin it.
Oh, I think it'll be fine. I dropped that thing a motherfucker. That's why I didn't react about it. I was like, I know this thing is a tank, and it was only like $150. So if it is screwed, like,
it's still laggy. It's kind of hard to tell. What does it look like to you guys?
Yeah, it's still probably a little delayed. I might do a reboot after this show is over. Here, I can try one more thing. Let's go back to the Gavin camera really quick. Appreciate it. Glad we got through the Kyle thing.
Yeah, I'm glad we got through that too. Hold with us, guys, just a second. Zach's gonna reboot that real quick. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but stick with us because we're going to have the super chat section of the show where we take your guys' questions and comments, and we're going to respond to all of these super chats that have built up. Really appreciate the generosity from you guys, and hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did. Obviously, always really appreciate Kyle stopping by. But yeah, we're going to hopefully get this camera working good, and then we're going to do super chat. So like I said, stick with us, everyone, for just another second. Yeah, we might have to.
All right, here we go.
I'll buy the new camera if we have to get one.
Oh yeah, it shouldn't be the end of the world anyway. I'm hoping that I can just we're working on something. I know.
Oh, no audio now?
No, there is audio now.
Okay.
There wasn't audio while I was talking because I wasn't pulled up on the camera. Now it should be fine. It's a little delayed. It's slightly delayed, but I think you guys can live with it while we're doing super chats, and we can make sure that it's all fine and dandy by tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, guys. That's my bad. Not Zach's fault.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all Gavin's fault though. That's I was sitting here minding my own business, performing. No, I'm kidding. It is what it is. Sometimes shit happens. Looks like Shane Baker, excuse me, Nicholas Del Toro, and then Das Bosfleisch. I'm one of the biggest Kyle fans, but I'm lacking 2 weeks behind his segments because I need to recharge my shields to stomach the bad news that he covers. Well, hey, shout out to Das Post Fleisch. I'm sure that Kyle understands that you're a little bit behind on his coverage.
Yeah, shout out to you, Das Post Fleisch. Hope you're feeling better. And yeah, I mean, I recommend the new segments. They're good stuff.
And I'm thinking also, Gavin, that the local recording of our camera might be fine, that it's more of an internet lag issue. So we'll get it all sorted out by tomorrow. But anyway, I'm looking at it and it seems like the actual camera is picking up footage fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Apologies again for the technical difficulties, guys, but shout out to you also, Ted11. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Keep up the good fight. We need a true progressive machine to compete with the TP USA types, but fight for the right reasons. Well, yeah, shout out to you, man. I totally agree with that. One thing that's enviable about the right-wing media ecosystem is that level of unity they have, but also that's, in large part thanks to their financing and their funding, which we simply do not have for, good reasons. We don't want to be corrupted.
100%. Shout out to HL for the $10. And also shout out to Benjamin for your tremendously generous super chats throughout the live stream. Shout out to Benjamin for the first one. You say MSNBC did Mehdi Hassan a favor firing him. You then ask Kyle, how does Kyle deal with pushback from his friends at TYT from going on a show like the Vanguard? Being a prominent Voshite has made my life difficult with people I know from TYT. Well, we only like to pull your leg about being a Voshite, but we don't actually care. And as far as Kyle dealing with those things, I mean, he's a grown man with a family. I don't think he really spends too much time thinking about, Anna Kasparian's opinion of him. But what's your response to these two guys, Gavin?
I would agree with that. I think obviously, I'm glad Mehdi's doing Zateo instead of MSNBC. And I agree with Zach. I don't think Kyle's all that concerned. I don't think he is dealing with that sort of pushback, because I don't even think he's that close of friends with the people at TYT. I mean, I think he considers them colleagues. I think he's considered them maybe friends at one point, but at this point in his career, I don't think they're on that level. It's not like he's getting a text message from Cenk when he, goes on a different show or something. At least I certainly hope not. But shout out to you, Benjamin. Really appreciate the generosity today. Another one from Benjamin. There's at least one based dim mega donor I can think of. Wish there was more people like me out here. Are you saying that you're the one based Democratic mega donor, Benjamin? Well, I mean, keep up the good fight, bro.
Yeah, hard to argue with that after you just sent us like $500. So you know what? For today, you're king for a day, Benjamin. One of the things that I often think about is that line from King of Comedy. It's better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime. Gavin and I are schmucks for a lifetime, but we get to kind of pretend to be kings. It's a good high and low, the wheel.
Yeah.
Shout out to B4 Time. Grassroots does not have a lot of money. That's true.
Yeah, that's the problem. Although, like I said, it's partially that way by design. We don't want to be corrupted.
100%.
Shout out to you once again, Benjamin. Kyle could probably triple his income from live streaming his show and reading the super chats. Well, Benjamin, that's something we've actually told Kyle himself. It was a few years ago he came on the show and we said, hey man, you're leaving a lot of money on the table by not doing live streams, by not taking super chats, by not answering questions and engaging with your community more. And he was like, well, I like doing it this way and I'm going to keep doing it that way. And he has, and he's been very successful. So if he wanted to do more live streams, I'm sure people in his community would enjoy that, and I'm sure he would get a lot of super chats. But I think he just prefers to kind of have that level of separation from the live audience, which is totally understandable. Some people, they kind of prefer to just talk to the camera instead of to an audience, and then let the audience see it later.
Oh yeah, Kyle is the kind of guy, he just does what he wants. He likes doing the show the way he does it. And I think that's how he's going to kind of continue to do so. But shout out to you, Benjamin. And obviously, when it's worked out as well as Kyle has, guys like me and Gavin just shut the fuck up and we say, wow, dude, you really fucking pulled it off. You know what I mean? Anyway, shout out to Tay Williams, Cosmic Nomad. Kyle, you should live. I'd support. That seems to be a common sentiment. But the reality is, guys, he doesn't need to go live. I don't think he wants to go live. And he's probably not going to start going live. And thank God for that, because, that would be more hours in the day that we would have steep competition. So you know what? Gavin and I are going to just count our blessings. If we had to go up against Kyle, we'd be like, damn, those are the hours of the day we cannot go live anymore.
Yeah, shout out to you, Ty. And I mean, sometimes he will. I think it's been a couple years, but sometimes he does go live. So, you never know.
Yeah, he called out the People's Party the official People's Party account, thinking it was Nick Brano one time. That was glorious.
Yeah, exactly. I think that account is in our chat right now. Oops. Yeah. I scared him. I don't think you scared him. I think he just confused you for someone else. But that was pretty funny.
Yep. Let's see. Let's see. This one. Shout out to you for the super sticker. Oh wait, no. Here we are.
Shout out to you, Pentaxon. Really appreciate the $10. Always love seeing you in the chat, man. Kyle devouring Jenks audience like Nancy Mace devours barbecue. Not just barbecue, beans, barbecue beans. Pentaxon.
That was a great tweet. It was like, that's a lot of beans, you nasty ass bitch. And I was like, this is hilarious. That's a Kyle Kulinski tweet if I've ever seen one.
And that shit went so viral too. Like even just normies who don't even pay attention to secular talk were sharing that one.
Yeah. Shout out to you, Pentaxon. We got a spammer in the chat. Don't worry, we got mods in the chat. Those guys are ghosts in the post. They take care of that shit for us. Shout out to you, Benji.
Yeah, the spammer was euthanized humanely. Shout out to you, John. Really appreciate the $9.99. Did Dims learn the wrong lessons from 2020 and 2022? Biden beat Trump due to COVID, and GOP lost in 2022 due to Roe v. Wade's overturn. Without these, Biden and Dims would have lost in 2020 and 2022. I mean, I think they're definitely going to learn the wrong lessons. They usually do. That's why the left needs a leader. The Democratic Party needs a leader to get us out of this muck, to get us out of this fray. We need someone who can like shine the light and be like, over here is the answer. Not don't keep doing this bullshit. So I do think we're probably going to learn the wrong lessons, or at least a lot of people will. But it's kind of hard to replicate. It's not like COVID was I mean, you can't just make COVID happen again.
Well, I got some homies in a Wuhan laboratory that might be fixing up just that.
Yeah, the bird flu. Here we go, baby.
Bro, I've been reading about the bird flu. There's already been the first confirmed case in the United States of the bird flu. We have not heard two.
Yeah, Louisiana and California now.
Oh God. I'm telling you, yeah, I saw the one in Louisiana. I didn't realize it made it to California. That's a long way across the country. That means there's definitely more cases out there that aren't confirmed yet. And I was like, Evan, you're a hypochondriac. I was in San Diego. Nothing's wrong. I'm just really sick, but it's not COVID. Nobody in America has COVID yet. In hindsight, I now know for a fact that in San Diego, I had a horrible case of COVID-19. And it was all over the country and all over the airports at that time. And so now I'm just like, not underestimating the impact bird flu will have. Even though I'm not forecasting the same response as COVID, I think we might see a lot of people get really, really sick from bird flu.
Yeah. Well, what's terrifying is if it is as bad as COVID, but Trump is too much of a bitch to actually do anything about it because he doesn't want to get punished, in the same way that, as John McKinney said, he lost because of COVID last time. So I feel like he might botch the response even more if there's another pandemic, which is terrifying. But shout out to you, Benjamin, once again for the super generous $300 super chat. That means a lot, man. Really helps us out. Thank you so much. Love seeing Kyle do more crossovers with other creators like Vosh and the Vanguard. Has he heard of Progressive Victory? We've got over 350,000 door knocks by teaching Vosh and Destiny's audience to organize, and helped arrange the Bernie Pokimane stream. Would love to see you collab too. Well, shout out to you, Benjamin. Unfortunately, we had a lot of questions to ask Kyle, so we weren't able to get to this one. He may have seen it in chat, though. The red $300 super chat might have caught his eye. You never know. But what I would recommend to you, Benjamin, and to the people at Progressive Victory is just to reach out directly to Kyle. Like if Progressive Victory just invited him to some event, there's probably a chance he would show up. But I don't know about. I feel like he'd have to understand what the actual mission of the organization is. If someone just, asked him about it on a live stream or something, he'd probably be like, well, I need to look into it. I don't really know what that is. So I would just recommend reaching out directly to him. Looks like you might have already tried that, but I don't know what to tell you, bro.
Yeah, shout out to Kyle. I would be shocked if he wasn't familiar with Progressive Victory at all. But I also know that Kyle probably has a bad taste in his mouth after what happened with him at Justice Democrats. So you might be, Sisyphus rolling that boulder uphill. But shout out to you, Benjamin. Two more from Benjamin. He says Joe Rogan is the new Alex Jones. And Benjamin Gilbert also adds, we need Kyle to collab with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, I'd be interested in watching Kyle talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson. We need more lefties to go out there and talk about the cosmos. That's something Gavin and I have talked about a lot. One of the things that made Joe Rogan really exciting, made him really interesting to watch, compelling to listen to, was the fact that he had broad interests that were not about politics. Right now, when he talks about politics, I want to tune out. What I loved about Joe was when he wanted to talk about, space. Did we land on the moon? Oh my gosh, is space really infinite? How do we know? What do we know about this cosmos, this galaxy? He would ask good questions that a curious, interested, normal person would ask, but also somebody who had thought about this before. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just showing up. Oh, like he was provocative in the kind of questions that he would ask about cosmology.
Right, 100%. Yeah, it was awesome. That was the golden era of Joe Rogan. And I agree, it would be cool to see more conversations like that from left-wing hosts where they just kind of get into like the mysteries of life and the mysteries of science, because that stuff is endlessly fascinating, and it can give us all a much needed break from the depressing realities of the political discourse, right? Sometimes it is nice to just sort of tune all of that out and explore the mysteries of the universe, like I said. But shout out to you, Benjamin. Really appreciate all your generosity once again today, man. It really does help out.
Oh, yeah. And you want to take this one from Jonathan Figliuolo?
Yeah, shout out to you, bro. Thanks for the $5. Imagine being anti-establishment and then sitting down and cozying up to the rich and established in the way that Rogan does. Yeah, 100%, bro. 100%. And not just any rich people, but literal oligarchs, tech company people like Mark Zuckerberg. Like, it's crazy. It's wild. And then to not even give any pushback. Like, it's not that I'm opposed to Mark Zuckerberg being interviewed. I think you could get a lot of interesting information out of the guy if you went in there with the proper approach, asked some pushback, came in there with a little bit of a strategy. But it really does seem like Joe Rogan's goal when he sits down with someone like Elon or Zuckerberg or Trump, it seems like his goal is to launder that person's reputation, not to have an interesting or challenging conversation.
100%. Shout out to you, Jonathan. Daniel adds, goddamn, Kyle is in beast mode and I'm here for it. Yeah, dude, Kyle went in on Cenk and on Joe Rogan. I was happy about that. I was like, you know what? You know what you're in for, Kyle. You've been on our show 4 or 5 times. We're like, let's not beat around the bush. We want to ask you about the poly market shit. I want to ask you about Cenk Uygur, and he didn't disappoint when we brought up Joe Rogan to boot.
Yeah, absolutely. Kyle was in beast mode. That was epic. Shout out to you, Benjamin. The red flag was the APAC money. We should have known better. Talking about Fetterman, I believe. Yeah, that definitely was a very red flag. Unfortunately, as we've talked about at length, he was still the best option, at least on paper, in that race.
Yeah, although it does suck how relevant that became and how horrible he decided to go, for sure.
And shout out to you also, Daniel, once again. Kyle is one of the most authentic and humble dudes, yet he spits absolute fire. I'm definitely taking notes. Well, as you should, bro. Anyone out there that's aspiring to be a YouTube content creator or political commentator, Kyle's a guy to take notes from. Zach and I certainly have. And as I said, his consistency has been rewarded. His refusal to sell out to sponsors has been rewarded. You really can learn a lot from his career trajectory, in my opinion.
Yeah. Shout out to you, Daniel, and shout out to Jonathan Figliuolo. What's ironic about the point Kyle is making about capitulation from the left is it is exactly what TYT is up to and calling it populism. Yeah, we pointed that out, how, you can't really be a truly progressive network if you're taking this corporate money. Kyle was really clear about that. He was like, you are not independent. You are not doing what we're doing. It's anathema to auction yourself off to the highest bidder and then continue to be advertising yourself as above the fray.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Shout out to you, Jonathan. Really appreciate that. And shout out to Lynn for the $3 super chat and the heart. Really appreciate that. Hope you enjoyed the live stream today, Lynn.
Shout out to Lynn.
And shout out to you, Benjamin, once again. Is AOC the fighter we wanted? No. But saying she sold out is disingenuous. You have to cash out in order to sell out. I mean, I don't know, bro. I think in some ways she has kind of cashed out as far as, her, cozying up to powerful people. At least she's attempted to cash out in some ways that we've documented in a pretty undeniable fashion. Like, I mean, voting for the Iron Dome and shit like that. There's a numerous points where she's really folded to the establishment in an attempt to climb the careerist ladder. And you can justify that and say that's what you have to do as a politician. She has no other choice. She's working within the system. Obviously, you can justify it till the cows come home. I'm not denying that. But I do think there are ways that you can, prove that she has sold out. Not entirely sold out, but there are ways in which she has. And that has to be part of our calculus. We have to be honest when we talk about potential leaders for the left. And we shouldn't lie about that. We don't have to shy away from it. But as Kyle said, I think he's right. It's not really up to us either. If she is chosen as the leader, if a movement amasses behind her, and that's who the person is, then yeah, obviously we're going to get behind her. It's not like we're going to sit here and, poo-poo her.
Yeah, I mean, another undeniable reality about AOC that we had to grapple with really early on is that she's never been very kind or charitable or involved with up and coming insurgent Democrats, right? Early on in the show's history, we interviewed Eva Putsova, who was running from, I believe, Arizona.
Yeah, the 1st district, I think.
1st district of Arizona. And she had a ton of indigenous folks, Native American folks that were in her district, and they'd been completely hung out to dry during COVID, and she was inspired to run. And AOC actually gave money to a blue dog establishment Democrat named Tom O'Halloran instead of Eva Putsova, right? So this would be like if some other progressive Democrat had given a bunch of money to Joe Crowley to make sure that AOC hadn't climbed up the ladder. We can also talk about how she never bothered to endorse Cori Bush when she beat Lacey Clay in the original race in 2018. She waited until after it was like, after she'd already won the election to kind of come up and cuddle up to her and be like, we're on this fight together. This is the squad, all that. Just she did not, so these are clear examples of her not sticking her neck out. Bernie Sanders did endorse Cori Bush in that race.
Yep.
Okay. AOC did not. So that would be an example I would give to kind of fortify Gavin's points in addition to the Iron Dome and the other,
and I hate to, bring it up, but also she did vote for Nancy Pelosi when many people were saying to force the vote. But again, not to go down that rabbit hole.
Gavin wants to spend an hour. No, I'm kidding. I agree. You want to take this one, Gavin? I was always skeptical about Jon Stewart, but I have slowly come around. I do remember this super chat from Benjamin, though.
I feel like Benjamin's mixing us up. I think I remember I was more open to the idea, and Zach was the one who was like, no, fuck that.
I think that was this most recent time after Kyle pitched it, though. I think that in the past, we probably both poo-pooed it in the past.
I go back and check, Benjamin, but I specifically remember like the first time you said this, I was like, you know what? It might take someone like Jon Stewart, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not trying to totally say that, but I remember being more open to your suggestion. But who knows? Maybe I'm misremembering.
Send another $100 and tell Gavin he's full of shit, Benjamin. I'm with you. I'm the only one that really stands up for Benjamin around here, okay? Benjamin Gilbert, that's a man that maybe I'm misremembering. Wow, Benjamin, you didn't really put up a lot of fight. Sometimes Gavin will catch me misremembering shit. I'll give it like a week and a half before I relent. I'll be like, no, I'm pretty sure that was AMC 20 where we saw the witch.
But don't you remember us arguing about that?
Oh, I do remember that time. I didn't know if further in the past we talked about it, and both of us kind of saying, oh, I don't know if he would make the good choice. But I do know that it's only after the Kamala Harris just devastating loss where I was like, I'm relenting. So because I remember coming out and hissing or having a little bit of a tantrum about the old like fossil fuels are frenemies. I do remember that entire episode. That's true. Yeah. Anyway, who cares though? Kyle is the fucking truth, said Big Shoe, and that's something that we can all fucking agree on.
Yeah, Kyle actually sent Zach a DM and said, "You better get behind Jon Stewart, motherfucker."
That's true.
Else I'm taking your channel down.
Every morning Kyle gives me a bunch of seltzer water to carry for him. We just carry water for Kyle Kulinski. It's carbonated water. I had originally kind of set up the intro. I was talking about soda, but then I find out that Kyle doesn't even like flavored LaCroix. I was like, wow, dude, you were really bare, but you were about the seltzer water.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember like back before the seltzer trend really popped off, like my parents would always just drink carbonated water at home. They'd always just have like bottles of fucking, carbonated water. And as a kid, I thought it was disgusting. Yeah. I was like, how does anyone drink this shit? Because it wasn't even the flavored stuff. Yeah. It was literally just straight, like Kyle was discussing. But it's true. The older you get, the more you acquire that taste for the carbonated. And the Europeans have that figured out. You'll go to fucking Europe and they'll just give you that shit. You ask for water and they're like, here's some water, and it's carbonated. And, if you don't know any better, you're just stuck with that shit.
Yeah, especially because it's a lot less common to just give people tap water in Europe, right? So they have to give you bottled water. And if you're opening a bottled water, it becomes fancy. It's like something that you can show with a little more prestige if it's carbonated. I think that's a big reason why they started doing it so much in Europe. But I digress. Gavin, you want to take this one from Niha Bale?
Yeah, shout out to you. Thanks for the $5. Joined the party late. Would love to ask Kyle, how do we hype up Jon Stewart to consider running? That's, a great follow-up that I would have liked to ask Kyle. Sorry that we weren't able to. Niha, we were at the very end of our time with Kyle. Wanted to be respectful, but it is a good question. And I think Kyle's right that Jon Stewart doesn't want to run for president, unfortunately. But I do think if there was just an undeniable movement out there, a real clamoring, people from across the political spectrum around this country saying, I want Jon Stewart. I'm ready to get behind Jon Stewart. Like, there was a poll that we were talking about, Zach, in like 2014, maybe, or like 2013, before anyone was taking Donald Trump seriously, that actually showed Donald Trump polling ahead of a lot of the establishment Republicans, people like Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush. And that probably really was an influence on Donald Trump to ultimately pull the trigger. He was like, shit, if I do this, there's polls out there that say I would have a chance. In the same way, if pollsters started including Jon Stewart in like upcoming, previews of the primary, and if he started doing well in those polls, I do think that probably more so than anything, in addition to just a lot of noise and energy online behind him, I think that might convince him, although it's still a big if.
Yeah, I think it's a good concept. I have a hard time to this day believing that it'll become a reality, but I'm not in the interest of, or in the business of, poo-pooing it for now. Shout out to a couple more from Benjamin. Rip my super chat to Kyle. Time to go back to emailing Kyle 800 times. And then, have you guys tried blowing on the camera? Yeah, I think it'll be fine tomorrow. I'll fix it. I'll reboot the software that runs our camera, and everything should be fine. And then you add that you are king for a day and schmuck for a lifetime. It's a good way to be. That's the Vanguard ethos. You know what I mean? That's the way we live our lives. It's our manifesto.
Yep. Dinner for Schmucks.
Steve Carell.
That's Zach's favorite movie.
I've actually never seen that movie, but I remember when it came out.
I also have never seen it. I think it has like
it does have Steve Carell in it.
Steve Carell, yeah. Shout out to you, Official People's Party USA. I can't afford your super booger cam. Is not, bro. I did not have any boogers. Everyone's saying that. Stop trying to trigger me. I
saw a big
clean,
one,
fresh,
huge, fat, gnarly. I think it had its own face and potentially its own endocrine system.
Either way, shout out to you for the $2. And this is not the actual Official People's Party, although I don't even know if that shit's still around. But I know you say you had the name first, bro. So maybe you are the real one.
Yeah, the real one.
Will the real People's Party please stand up? And shout out to, speaking of, wow, what a fucking cosmic coincidence. Speaking of, shout out to you, Wendy. If Slim Shady betrays me like TYT did, I will lose all hope in humanity. Luckily, I can tell you, Wendy, that ain't going to happen. I would bet my fucking life on it. Unless Kyle literally has a John Fetterman style stroke and the chemistry of his mind changes, then no, it's not going to happen. And I think a big part of the reason why is what he mentioned about Cenk. Cenk is more than just a political commentator. Cenk has always viewed himself as a business person. That's why he gets along so well with the likes of Patrick Bet-David, right? Because he really wants to be in that world. He really wants to be thought of as like a business guy, a business leader, whatever. And that's just not Kyle. Kyle's the opposite, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah. You could, if you ever needed a better example, not last year's Thanksgiving, but the one before that from 2 years ago, where Cenk totally goes to bat for the corporate structure and the corporate profit motive and says, well, they had the idea and they took the risk. And it's like no different than the Peter Schiff bullshit that they say for anarcho-capitalism on the Joe Rogan Experience. It's the same idea. He wants regulation on that, but he still thinks for the most part it's based. And that's the flaw. Shout out to Brian, who adds Biden was wrong to escalate a proxy war with the nuclear power, spending billions on the military-industrial complex while homelessness increased over 80% last year. Hard to find anything to disagree with right there, Brian. Thank you for sending that super chat.
Yeah, shout out to you, Brian. Totally agree with you on that one. Thanks for the $5. And shout out to you, Daniel. Once again, we didn't choose Bernie. His rise was organic. We boosted him because he was authentic. We struck while the iron was hot and while social media wasn't. I think that's pretty fair. But I think that by 2020, it was fair to say that he had kind of been chosen as the leader of that movement. That's why a lot of people were so pissed at Elizabeth Warren, quite frankly. They were like, you could have been the leader of this movement if you had run 4 years ago, but you didn't, and Bernie did. So now he is the leader, and there's nothing you can fucking do about it. So stop trying to steal the spotlight and act like, oh, this stupid bullshit plan for Medicare for all is actually better than the one everyone's already behind. You're just fracturing the movement now. So I think in the same way, all Kyle was saying is like, once a leader has kind of been chosen, or not chosen, but, has risen, it can be kind of annoying when other people, like, the Elizabeth Warren example, stuff like that. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying, Zach?
Yeah, 100%. Also, I think that your thing about X, are you talking about Twitter? That was the other thing I was trying to figure out, like before Twitter got nukes.
Yeah.
But anyway, shout out to you, Daniel. I really appreciate the super chat. And shout out to Ted11 for the $4.99. I wish Kyle and others would partner with unions and focus on fundraising from normies to build a financial muscle to compete versus the Turning Point USA types. Well, funny you should mention that, Ted11, because you should Google Kyle Kulinski and the Justice Democrats. Him and Cenk Uygur and a few other individuals. They kind of did this, and they got a bunch of people into Congress. Kyle left Justice Democrats in kind of solidarity with Cenk Uygur, which lets you know what kind of a friend Kyle is and what kind of a guy Cenk is immediately off the bat. So he's kind of been down that whole rabbit hole before, and I think he put it really plainly and really cleanly and really honestly for everyone that he sees himself as a broadcaster, and he wants to be a broadcaster, and he's going to broadcast, and he's going to work really hard at it. And that's what he's going to do. So I wouldn't expect Kyle to pick up this job title, because there's only so many hours in a day. And one thing I've learned is it takes a lot of hours to stay prepped and ready to do your 2 or 3 hours of your show. So I just don't know if he has the bandwidth to launch something like this. He also, he's a stepdad now. He has a family. He's married to Crystal, who's also fucking busy as all hell. So I imagine they're juggling, making lunches for kids, getting people to the bus for school. I don't fucking know what it's like to be a parent, but adds a lot of chaos to your life. So I don't know if Kyle's got the free time for this right now, but it's a great idea.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that, some commentators, I know Hassan has done a lot of fundraising for various causes and stuff like that. So yeah, it's always a good thing to see. But obviously we're all busy too. So, you can only expect so much from any one person. Shout out to you, Ted. Really appreciate that. And thank you, Ronwell, for the $5. I was so glad that my guy, Thomas Massey, was creating chaos against Mike Johnson by voting against him for the Speaker of the House. Yeah, Ronwell, I was also kind of glad to see that. It sucks that on the second round of voting, Mike Johnson was confirmed anyway. But yeah, I do kind of like the chaos that Thomas Massey brings. I think that out of all the Republicans, he's probably the best, if you could say that. He doesn't take corporate money. He kind of has like an old school Ron Paul vibe or something, where again, I disagree with him on a ton of stuff. He's probably said a bunch of horrific things, but he does seem to be like one of the only people on the Republican Party that you could even remotely call like a genuine populist right winger. But then again, I'm sure he's done and said a bunch of bad shit too.
One of the cool things he did say was that he would rather have all of his fingernails pulled out than vote for Mike Johnson for Speaker. And I was like, this is the kind of energy that I want somebody on the left to say about voting for Nancy Pelosi. I want AOC to come out and say, I would rather have all of my fingers and toenails removed with pliers than cast that vote, because then at least you're like, hell yeah, this person stands for something. I like what Benjamin stands for. Gavin sucks. And it's cozying up to the anti-Jon Stewart lobby, which is hilarious because he's been the Jon Stewart defender. Zach is based. Now we're talking, and thus winning the Benjamin lobby. Well, I don't know how I feel about the Benjamin lobby, but I like that Zach is based commentary.
Yeah, I don't know what you're smoking, bro. I've been with you. I've been trying to get Jon Stewart to step up to the plate. But shout out to you, bro. Really do appreciate your generosity on today's live stream. Shout out to you also, Das Bosa Fleisch, the voice of reason, needs to get louder and louder, wishing people like Kyle, Jordan, and you guys a mega channel growth. Well, huge shout out to you, Das Bosa Fleisch. I agree. I hope that Kyle, Jordan, Arcel, I hope every left-wing channel keeps growing. That's a big part of the cultural resistance that we have to engage in, right? Because it ain't going to come from the elites. It's going to come in a form of a cultural revolution. And that's something I've been thinking a lot more about. I feel like back in the 1960s, obviously, specifically, left-wing movements were just so much more ambitious, Like you think about the hippies, it's not like they were just trying to stop the war. No, they were trying to install a whole new fucking culture. It was a cultural revolution of, love and obviously, again, anti-war values, but it was a total cultural revolution. It completely transcended any one political cause. And I think that, yeah, the left should be ambitious. We should be thinking about that. And we should be thinking about how to, really change people's hearts and minds.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at the Black Panthers. They were like, what we're going to do? We're going to feed kids lunch. Breakfast. It was breakfast. And they were like, we're just going to go out and we're going to feed kids breakfast every day. And we would, and I remember when you read, I think it's Angela Davis's autobiography. She talks a lot about how in the early days, like she just would groan and she would get up at 5 a.m. and she would make pancakes for all these kids before they would send them off to school, because there were no programs like school breakfast for kids, and people were constantly having to send their kids with no lunch money and no breakfast to school all day so they could just sit, be hungry, and look at the kids that did have money eating, right? It was crazy. So they were like, let's get involved immediately. Let's be an essential portion of our community. And that's before they got into the healthcare clinics, tackling sickle cell anemia, which was, a big problem in the Black community, but not being addressed by the federal government or any of the local communities outside of the Black Panther Party. So there's a lot, as Gavin pointed out, from the past for us to look to and say, hey, we have a lot more that we can do as the momentum grows. But also, I mean, it kind of takes insane leadership to accomplish that. And one of the things that it felt like the 60s had in droves was these iconic leaders, right? People like Malcolm X, people like Martin Luther King, people like Angela Davis, people like, the founders of the Black Panther Party, right? You have Bobby Seale, you have all these guys anyway.
Yeah. And not just leaders, though. I feel like there was a bunch of just normal people that were willing to just get out in the fucking streets, and protest, take their fucking clothes off, demonstrate. You know what I'm saying? Like there was just a lot more participation from the public in those movements. Mm-hmm. Obviously, not everyone was a great leader, but it seemed like people were more willing to get out there and actually push back on the establishment, push back on the culture at large. Obviously, people talk about how that all kind of came crashing down in the 1970s after the Manson murders and the end of the hippie shit and the obviously government, assassinations of a lot of the civil rights leaders and radicals. But yeah, we should try to get back to that.
100%. You want to take that one from Cooking with Shugs?
Yep. Shout out to you, Cooking with Shugs. Thanks for the $1.99. How does anyone drink tonic water so gross? So I'll tell you, with a little bit of gin.
Yeah, every time I've gotten thirsty at work and we've been all out of club soda or Perrier, and I'm like, oh man, the only thing's cold is tonic water, and then I rip the cap off of it and I start drinking it. Oh, the quinine is so bitter. So if you like bitter water, you would love tonic water, but I prefer just regular bubbly water.
Yeah, me too. Although I do like a gin and tonic.
Sure. Oh, in a
context,
cocktail. Yeah.
Yeah, in that context, it actually does work. I like the bitterness of it. Specifically with a bit of lime. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I wouldn't just drink a freaking tonic water. And just to be clear, this is not tonic water. It's just the seltzer we've been, talking about. The seltzer water is different than tonic water. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, tonic water's got just all kinds of nastiness in it that makes it, approachable in a cocktail, but not necessarily how you would want to hydrate on a regular basis. Right. It also has sugar in it sometimes, or it has like salt in it sometimes.
It almost always does have sugar in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's why people think they're ordering a gin and tonic and they think it's like, oh, this is a 0 sugar healthy beverage, but actually tonic is pretty sweet.
Yeah. It depends on if the place makes it themselves. Because a lot of places now will do, like if you go to Jim's Alley Bar, they do bicarbonated, like soda and quinine, like reduction. It's kind of weird, but yeah, and shout out to Trans Girl 420. Zach, how do you like the SM7DB? And yeah, Topo Chico rules. Topo Chico rules, but it's expensive, so I never like buy it because it always comes in the glass bottles, and I'm like,
it also got bought up by Coca-Cola.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember back in the pre-Coca-Cola Topo Chico days. It was actually one of my mom's favorite brands of like seltzer water to buy, and she was like, it's the most dry seltzer. My mom is obsessed with like dry things. She's like, LaCroix is not dry enough. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's salt. It's none of it has any sugar. And she's like, Topo Chico's more dry. Anyway, then it got bought by Coca-Cola, and in my opinion, it's gone downhill since. But shout out to you.
Yeah, and the new Shure mic is awesome. I've been really enjoying it. I think it's crisp, clean, good sounding audio. I'm definitely happy with it.
Just wait till I come stomping by and knock it off.
Fee, fi, fo, fum. I see the mic of an Englishman.
Yeah, shout out to you though, Transgo. Really appreciate the 420.
Yeah. Shout out to Brian Frederick. Biden put a $25 million bounty on Maduro. I saw that shit. It's like meanwhile, they're like talking about how the ICE International Criminal Court is anti-Semitic, and now they're gonna fucking put up a horseshit bounty on the president of Venezuela. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I did hear about that, but I need to like actually look into it and read about it. Insane though.
Do you think anything comes from that, Gavin? Because I read the headline and it was like, if you can collect, I feel like you're just gonna get a bunch of those weird assholes like we already saw get exposed when they tried to get the last or maybe it was still Maduro. But it was when we were really leaning into the Juan Guaido thing, and then they sent these like podunk Walmart brand special ops guys to go assassinate it. And I'm like, bro, I hope that if you try and do that, they just throw you in a jail cell in Venezuela and never let you out again.
Yeah, that was actually pretty glorious when those guys all just immediately were like dealt with and they were not successful. Shout out to you, Edward. Ask Kyle why he doesn't challenge Sagar's ridiculous right-wing populist tweets. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why, Edward. I mean, that's his wife's co-host. He probably just doesn't want to create awkwardness and tension where it doesn't need to exist. Which is understandable, I think. I mean, it's pretty clear the point of Breaking Points is that Crystal and Sagar disagree, and disagree they do. Like, check out this morning's episode of Breaking Points. There's multiple like lengthy debates, and I enjoy that. Like, I actually genuinely enjoy hearing Crystal and Sagar have like a 30 to 40 to even 50-minute long thorough debate. Even when I want to pull my hair out over what Sagar is saying, I appreciate the fact that Crystal gets to respond to it, right? And then everyone in the audience hears that. So I don't really have an issue with that, and I don't think it's Kyle's job to come in there and police Sagar on Twitter for Crystal or something. But I see what you're saying, and thanks for the super chat.
Yeah, Edward's obviously not married. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my wife's life harder every single day for my own personal amusement. I'm going to, I'm going to make it a little more awkward when you go to work just because I can't help I totally agree with Gavin. There's a reason why he doesn't do that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And shout out to Rachel Atwood. So sorry we missed the super chat earlier. Big Seltzer, I also love the bubbles, but I also feel bad about the plastic bottles. Is there an ethical alternative to SodaStream that anyone knows of? Well, glass bottles are always available in the Mountain Valley spring water. I kind of prefer the non-carbonated Mountain Valley spring water because it's easy to drink a lot of fast, but they also have a bubbly version that's perfectly good. And that's glass, and it's, I'm pretty sure, ethically sourced and all that shit.
Yeah, you can actually visit the place in Arkansas. I forget what it's called, but there's a town in Arkansas where they get this water, Mountain Valley spring water, and it's super cool. I recommend everyone check it out. It's an awesome town in Arkansas. I forget the name, but you can tour the springs and buy water from this. I feel like today's whole show has been a fucking commercial for different whatever beverages Zach and I enjoy. But for real, Mountain Valley water is awesome, and they also do have flavored versions of the spring water, Zach. They have like a blueberry or something and like a lime flavor that you can get in glass bottles. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I agree about the plastic bottles. And that's actually one thing that I hate about Perrier, Rachel, is that usually when you get a Perrier, it's in a plastic bottle, which I do think negatively impacts the taste.
Yeah. I don't like it when my water's been in a plastic bottle 100% because then I think about how long it's sat on a truck and all the little fucking microplastics that are in there. Anyway.
Fucked up.
You want to take this one?
Shout out to you, Cooking with Suggs, again for the 199. Do you remember Sam Rowan from the 2016 DNC race? Based. I actually don't. Do you, Zach?
No, I Googled him, and the only thing I'm seeing is Sam Rowan, who was a concept artist for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. So I'm not sure, but maybe you can link it to us and then we can figure it out. Shout out to you, Cooking with Suggs, and shout out to Brian Frederick. Biden's domestic record not even close to Johnson. That's fair. I think the point that Kyle was making was for somebody with such disastrous foreign policy, you can kind of draw some parallels to the domestic policy being, with the low bar that we've set. Probably, I don't know. Gavin, would you think it's fair to say probably since Johnson, the most we've invested in the American public, just because it's the only time really we've invested in I don't know. It's tough to say. I hear the pushback, Brian. I just think it's convenient for everybody to be like, yeah, the foreign policy was disaster. The domestic policy was like less bad.
Yeah. I definitely see what Kyle's saying, but I also agree with you, Brian, that I don't think Biden will even be looked back upon as fondly as Johnson is in a domestic sense. We talked about, obviously, not only did he sign the Civil Rights Act, but also Social Security. And those are both like, I mean, you can't even imagine society today without Social Security. I'm like, it's genuinely hard to believe that there was ever an America without it. So many people, so many old people. I would imagine the percentage is staggering of the amount of retired Americans who literally live off of their Social Security, who rely on it solely as their ability to survive. So it's genuinely crazy to imagine society before that. And yeah, that is one thing that I don't think Biden has any like equivalent of that.
No, but to be fair to Biden, just as we fortify and steelman the LBJ comparison, he did raise the amount of money that people are going to get while they're on Social Security. So that's one thing that he did recently do.
Oh, Biden did?
Yeah, on his way out, he's done a couple of decent things. One of them is, I think, raising the amount of money you get from Social Security by like $300 a month, which honestly is not nothing if you're a struggling adult.
Oh, yeah, that's actually pretty crazy.
You know, that's enough
dope.
to help with
Just
you know,
everyone?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, let me Google that to make sure. But I'm pretty sure all people who are collecting Social Security, Biden raises Social Security payout.
Interesting, because I always heard it was like based on how much you paid into it or something. But
Well,
if they just did it like universally by 300 for everyone, that
yeah,
would be...
on average, it's $360 more per month.
Shit, well, you hear that, all you retired fucking Trump voters? You thank the Democrats for the extra $360 in your bank account.
There we go. Bernie Bros canceled the Democrats. Bro canceled the duopoly. I don't think that we ever said that Bernie Bros canceled the Democrats.
Yeah,
But
that's...
shout out to you, official People's Party.
Yeah, shout out to you. Really appreciate that. I mean, I'd love to cancel the duopoly. Unfortunately, I think that there's not really a compelling alternative right now. Frankly, the Libertarian Party and the Green Party embarrass themselves so thoroughly every election cycle. It almost kind of makes the case for a duopoly. People are like, well, as much as I hate the Democrats and the Republicans, they're at least somewhat serious compared to these absolute jokers, specifically the Libertarians. Did you see that tweet from the Libertarian Party that was like, if you don't have money to pay for cancer treatment, then you deserve to die?
Bro, I saw. Yeah, dude. It's like, obviously they've tweeted shit about how like child labor should come back, and they told Nina Turner to pick cotton or some shit like that, of like fucking ridiculous shit from libertarians. So I'm not surprised. Anyway, last one was Rachel reminding us that we accidentally missed her super chat. Sorry about that, Rachel. You'll get a special shout out on our next stream as I reward you for having to send an extra $2. Did my soda stream comment disappear? No, unfortunately, in the hustle and bustle, that one got missed, and we're super sorry.
Yeah, so sorry about that, Rachel. Really appreciate the additional $2 though. You didn't have to send that. Although maybe you did, or we would have actually missed it. So yeah. Sorry you had to do that, I guess is what I should say. Really do apologize, but thank you for tuning in today, Rachel, and thank you for the super chats, and shout out to Pendulous Dragon for being a member for 2 months. Alone we suffer, together we learn and trudge forward. Well, that's a hell of a message to end our super chat pile on. I agree, man.
Yeah, shout out to you, Pendulous Dragon, and shout out to everybody that listened today. Really appreciate everyone. We'll be back. We've got some banger stuff in store. Oh, shout out to Felipe, rather. I don't know. Felipe Cortez. Yo, guys, been a while since I was able to join a live stream because of work. Thoughts on all the homeless scores keeping LA safe, LOL, and thoughts on Elon being exposed, being a fake gamer. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing when it comes to the homeless scores keeping LA safe. I'm not sure if homeless people have been fighting fires. I'm not sure if they've done or what you're referencing. I know there's a lot of incarcerated folks that have been fighting fires, and shout out to them. I think it's without a doubt something that should be considered, that like, hey, if you fought a bunch of fires, maybe we should, commute your sentence. Maybe we should let you out on the street. You're clearly able to contribute to society. We clearly need and value you. We clearly think you're, safe enough to be out and about. So that's something I would think about. And then Elon getting exposed as a fake gamer is about the most obvious thing ever. Anybody who doesn't play games like a crazy person is dog shit at video games. And even though Elon Musk is doing a lot of shit poorly, he seemingly is out and about doing a lot of shit. So when you see somebody that's performing like an I'm glued to my computer all day desktop warrior, pretty easy to figure out that he's not exactly a savant at video games when you've actually watched him play. So I think that was how the guys were able to piece it together. They were like, how come you look like a total scrub when we watch you play, when we see you playing? And then when nobody sees you playing, you look like you're an all-star and you need to be on the national or international rankings boards for this game. And it's like, oh yeah, because you paid some guy in Asia who you didn't think they would track in Bitcoin to run up your fucking scores on like Fortnite or something stupid. It's so dumb.
Yeah, it's such poser bullshit. I'm glad he's getting called out. It kind of reminds me of like when you meet someone who claims to be just a total diehard cinephile, and then you start realizing that actually what that means to them is that they just watch some like A24 movies every once in a while. Like, oh, my favorite movie is like Midsummer or something. But it's like, this is stolen valor. Just because you've seen a few movies that aren't, totally mainstream doesn't make you some scholar of cinema. In the same way,
movie in Spanish once, bro.
Yeah, exactly. In the same way, I feel like for a lot of the people in the gaming community, they did sort of think of Elon as one of them, and now they're realizing it was all a charade, all just a ruse to trick them and to try to make it more likable or whatever. But it is, yeah, it's stolen valor for the gaming community, Jules.
Yeah. Well, shout out to all of you guys, and shout out to Philippe or Felipe. One of these days you can let us know if we're butchering your name, dog. But really appreciate you supporting us at the end of the show. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us live with our conversation for Kyle Kulinski. We're going to fix our camera. We're going to fix our Ethernet cord, which I think got jostled. And I'm actually convinced is what's causing the problem because I can't see our logo show up on StreamYard right now. So it'll all be fixed. Young children, this is DIY media. If you don't want us to have to announce that we're paid by Polymarket, every once in a while there's going to be a technical difficulty live on air. That's how you know we bleed when we're cut and we're real human beings.
Yep, absolutely. And shout out to all you guys for tuning in today. Really glad that everyone enjoyed that conversation. We obviously, are very grateful to Kyle for stopping by today. Had a lot of interesting insights to share. And as always, we like to end the show by shouting out the Patreon community. Really appreciate all the folks who make what we do possible. Hit up the link in the description, guys, if you'd like to support the show, if you want to fuel the revolution in the new year. Independent media, definitely, it's going to be important. As we talked about, it's more than just a political revolution at this point. We're embarking upon a cultural revolution. And yeah, that does start with, YouTube commentators, channels, people that are out there spreading these ideas. So really appreciate the help from everyone who's making it possible. Hit up the link, like I said, in the description, just $5 a month to get your name up there on the shout out screen.
Oh yeah, really appreciate everyone. That's how you access all of our uncut gems, our unfiltered, unedited, and raw live streams. You can also become a YouTube member, guys. This Kyle Kulinski interview, if you missed it, it's going to be available for members. We've also got our Mehdi Hassan interview on deck. You can go back and check out our exchange with Mike from PA. That's all within the last 5 days, guys. Looking towards next week, we've got Ron Placone coming over in a few days to talk with us about what's happening in Los Angeles, the fires, also spill some tea from behind the scenes at the Jimmy Dore show, potentially. Don't want to miss that. We've also got Emma Vigeland coming by the show. I think Mike Figueiredo's tentatively scheduled to join us on Inauguration Day. This show is taking off. If you don't want to miss it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We will be back, and we will be banging.
Yep, absolutely. Hit that subscribe button, guys. If anyone's tuning in for the first time, we'd love to welcome you to the community. And while you're at it, ring that notification bell so you don't miss one of the aforementioned streams. We got a lot of good stuff coming up for you guys. So, yeah, peace out, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Monday.
Boom.
Look out the door if you hear an ambulance. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there. Be